I walk in and my phone had died earlier in the night. And I go to the bathroom to plug it in and an alert comes from Bank of America. It says overdraft protection applied. So I open it up and there was like an automatic charge that tried to hit my checking account. I had $19.27 in my checking account. I had zero in my savings. So at that point in time, I had just had this night surrounded by millionaires, dancing with models, going to a prince's after party. And I had less than $20 in my bank account.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 114 of the Andrew Deitsch podcast. If you don't know already, this podcast is all about having meaningful conversations with some of the most fascinating people that I know, and I have the privilege of getting to sit down in person with them in my studio, and we just have great conversations. But before we jump into the show, just wanted to mention that this episode has been produced by Eyes Ahead Media, which is a digital agency focused on helping brands create content and tell their stories. I'm really excited to have the Eyes Ahead team really taking some of the stress off my shoulders of creating and producing the podcast, which is letting me do what I do best, being a host, focus on bringing on awesome guests, having those conversations, but leaving a lot of the production and the editing and everything to a team. And trust me, that has been a very anxiety-inducing experience, mainly because this show has been my baby from day one and I've handled pretty much everything from front to back. But being able to hand some of this off to the Eyes Ahead team has been honestly amazing, and I just want to give a shout out to whoever on the Eyes Ahead team is editing this right now. What's up? I'm very thankful for you guys, and I'm very, very excited for this partnership to grow and blossom into something amazing. But yeah, so major shout out to the Eyes Ahead Media team. All right, so my guest today is philanthropist, world traveler, and fitness enthusiast Matt Thomas. Matt has some amazing stories and has done a ton of amazing things, but most notably, he is the founder of Brawl for a Cause, which is an event where everyday people get to literally fight for causes that they believe in. You'll hear all about that and much more in the beginning of the episode, but in addition to that, Matt's gotten some amazing opportunities to rub shoulders with some of the most influential people on the planet. He's gotten to travel the world, do some really amazing things, and on this episode, we talked about how growing up in a divided household really kind of gave him a different perspective on life. Also traveling at a young age, attending some really crazy events that he probably had no business being at. And we talked about how he dropped out of law school. This was an awesome episode. I feel like Matt and I could have gone on for hours. So I think I'm probably gonna have to ask him to come back and share some more stories. But without any further ado, please welcome Matt Thomas. Well, Matt Thomas, what's up, man?
Dude, Andrew, thanks for having me.
Glad you're here. Well, I've already kind of introduced you, so in the intro part, people kind of know who you are and everything, but in your own words, how do you describe yourself? If someone like walks in an elevator and they're like, "Oh, cool, so what do you do?" Like, what's your typical go-to?
Yeah, man, my life, especially right now, is all about Brawl for a Cause. So founder of a nonprofit called Brawl for a Cause. What we do is charity boxing events. But instead of boxers, we get first-timers in the ring, and they choose a charity to fight for. They start a fundraising campaign for it. We train them for 8 weeks. While they're training, they fundraise. Everyone that donates gets to come out and watch their friend get punched in the face for what they believe in.
There we go. You got it down to a science. That's awesome. So obviously, Brawl for a Cause is like your main baby. You've been working on it for a few years now. I know that you kind of started a similar project like back in college. But before we dive into like all of how Brawl for a Cause existed, I kind of want to go back and get to know how the Matt Thomas of today became the Matt Thomas of today. And I'm sure there's lots of stories along the way. I know you've done a lot of like cool traveling, so I want to ask you about that. But let's go back. So you were born in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, a little town outside Philly called Phoenixville. So if people are familiar with King of Prussia Mall, one of the biggest malls in the U.S., both my
King
mom
of
and dad.
Prussia Mall? What's it called?
King of Prussia, like the old empire, the
King
European
of
empire.
Oppression.
No,
no, I'm just kidding.
That's part of Pennsylvania, you know. So, but yeah,
that's funny. King of
cold
Prussia.
Up there.
Interesting.
No, so both my parents are from Philadelphia suburbs. They met at University of Delaware, got married young, had me, divorced 9 months later.
Wow.
My mom went and got her master's at Penn State in adult education, got a job with a big consulting firm called Anderson Consulting, which later turned into Accenture. So she was a rock star. She worked her butt off.
Did you you lived with your mom?
Yeah. So I moved around with my mom from just outside Philly to State College, where Penn State was. Moved to Delaware, moved to Chicago, moved to Charlotte, moved to Atlanta, back to Charlotte, back to Atlanta. Atlanta's where I did high school. So
Nice.
I consider Atlanta home and kind of upbringing, but I moved around a lot growing up, which I actually loved.
Yeah, I feel like that's actually, obviously there's pros and cons of every, experience that you have when you're a kid, but, I think there's definitely pros of like staying in one spot, because obviously you can keep the same friends and all that kind of stuff, but also like seeing more of the world, I feel like just gives you more, life experience, gives you like more exposure. You get to see more sides of the world than just your little neighborhood.
You get to evolve.
Yeah.
I mean, at every new place, it's new people, new experiences, new lessons. You can recreate yourself every new place you go.
That's very true.
Growing up, it instilled a lot of resilience in me. It instilled a lot of just an appetite to learn and meet new people, and I've carried that today.
That's awesome. So you said your parents got divorced like 9 months after. So kind of, not to dive into this too much, but I feel like a lot of people can relate. But it's kind of interesting because you probably don't even really, obviously don't remember the time when your parents were together.
Those 9 months.
Yeah, those 9 months are just locked in there. So growing up in a separated household, like that was all you kind of knew. Was it weird for you ever, or did that feel like normal? Or?
Honestly, I feel really blessed. I didn't have to go through what a lot of people go through when their parents divorce, which is seeing their parents fight.
Yeah.
I really never even saw my parents in the same room together. It was 14. I saw them on the same day. When you have to decide who you want to live with. 14 is the age in Pennsylvania where you're like, okay, I'm going to stay with my mom, and that's basically it. And then I saw them when I graduated high school. They both came. When I graduated college, they both came. And then the last Brawl for a Cause, they both came. So that's like, I basically lived two separate lives, with my dad and with my mom, and I never really, was in a house where they were, at
fighting
each other
and stuff.
Yeah. So I feel blessed in that.
That's good. Yeah, because I feel like when your parents are fighting like that, like you start to harbor resentment against both of them. So if you saw them in like different arenas, it's like probably better.
There's a lot of outcomes
for sure.
that happen, and I have my own. It didn't come without side effects for me too. But I just didn't have that one, which I feel like a lot of divorced kids kind of go through.
So I know on your website you said that you consider yourself a middle seat kid.
Yeah.
What is that? Explain that for people.
Yeah, so once a month I was visiting my dad. And so I would, either he would fly down, I would fly up. 4 times a year, at least, I would be up in Philadelphia. So I was flying a lot. When I was a kid, I was a gold medallion on Delta. So, I would
pretty
be
badass.
Upgrades with my little Thomas the Tank Engine roller bag, walking by, business class people that I got an upgrade instead of them, And I love sitting in the middle seat because if you're on the aisle or if you're at the window, you only have one opportunity to make a connection with someone on the plane. And if that's a dud, then you're staring out the window or you're reading a book. And I wasn't very good at reading. And
and we didn't have iPads.
And
or
I really
anything.
like people. So if you're in the middle seat, you got 2 chances, and maybe both of them get in the conversation. You make 2 friends. And
what's the most memorable conversation you had as a kid on a plane?
Well, this is a little later in life, but it's the one that came to mind first. So I'll say it. I was in college actually, and I was on my way back from Sweden. I was dating a Swedish girl, and I sat next to this guy for 6 hours, Amsterdam to Atlanta, and really interesting guy. He ran a private security company, and he was a government contractor in Africa. He would train up militia in Africa to fight against anti-democracy regimes. And I was like, wow, this is an awesome story. And so, probably about 2 hours into the flight, he kind of switches it. So I stop asking questions. He starts digging into my life a little bit. And I was kind of at a juncture where I had started Brawl for a Cause, and my plan was always to go to law school. And so I was talking about this crossroads that I was at, like, which do I do? Like, my whole life has been geared towards law school, and I'm really drawn to being a litigator and being in a courtroom and performing and making arguments and all that kind of stuff. But I also have this thing in me that wants to be an entrepreneur, and I started this thing in college. I don't know if it's going to be a thing, but like, I like creation, and I like creating value and bringing people together and all this kind of stuff. And I tell some other stories from my life, and he stops me, and he goes, you strike me as the type of person that is never going to have a problem finding something to do. It's not going to be, I can't get a job. It's going to be, you have 4 options between great jobs, and you have to deliberate between those options. And I don't want to be like, woe is me, I have great options that I have to decide through. But that has its own adversity, it has its own struggle.
Yeah, it's kind of like the first world problems, it's like there's still problems, but it's like I'd rather have those problems than other problems.
Sure. So yeah, when he said that, it almost felt like, like Greek mythology, the oracle, Delphi. You'd go to this guy, and he'd say something profound to you, and it'd stick with you, and it'd become kind of your like origin story, stuck in my head. And so, as I kept going through life, whenever I have these crossroads, I'm like, I think back to that guy, I think back to that moment, I'm like, either way, it's a good outcome. And I needed to develop some sort of backdrop, some sort of criteria for making these decisions. And at least at that stage of my life, I didn't have that yet. So I would torture myself going back and forth between these 2 options, because I would love to do them both, but I can't do them both, right? So what I needed to develop is some sort of value system, some sort of way to discern what the right path to take would be. And it wasn't until later in life that I was able to do that.
That's interesting. It's kind of cool when you have like an outsider perspective that has no stake in what the heck happens to you, like tell you something that meaningful. Because like I can definitely relate to that, but that's a really good way of putting it. Like, if you believe in yourself and you kind of know your worth as far as like just being a hard worker or whatever, like you're probably never going to be stuck in a position where you're going to be really like struggling to find something. Like I can kind of relate to that, where I dropped out of college, and like a lot of people told me like, those options, you're not going to have those options anymore and stuff like that. And I was always kind of in the back of my head thinking like, I've got a lot of like good connections, not to toot my own horn or whatever, but it's like, it seems like I could always figure something out. Like somebody would take me, even if it's just whatever, even if it's just like a freaking little job, like at least I know that I could get brought on in something. And I can definitely relate to that. Was it like a thing that you felt like you were fulfilling for your parents to go to law school, or was that really something that you were like you were super gung-ho about?
So two things there. One, when my mom got pregnant, I was unplanned. Early relationship, not really in a financial place to be able to support a child and all that kind of stuff. So when I was conceived, my mom had been admitted to law school. And it was a passion of hers. And so I remember hearing that when I was a kid and just thinking, okay, law school. My mom wanted to do it, she didn't get to do it. And that kind of stuck in my head. But as I developed my interest through high school, I went to Westminster locally. They had a really strong humanities program, history and English, and I really fell in love with some of the teachers there. So I really poured myself into the softer sciences, and I kind of looked at what I could do with that, and I would love to be a teacher. I think in my life, I think I am a teacher now, but more formal education, I think will be a part of later in my story. But it's really either like teaching or law school.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I love, there's a social element, like a social status element to being a lawyer. There's a financial component to being a lawyer. But what I really loved is I saw it as chess in a courtroom. You're preparing, more than anyone really knows if you're not in the legal field for just a few minutes in the arena. And that would later translate to my experience with boxing and everything. So it was in this vein of like how I thought already, and I grew up playing competitive chess, so that was kind of like in my head. It's like, hey, chess players turn into good lawyers too. So it was a combination of like yeah, my parents would be proud of me. My mom didn't get to do this. Like, I'll fulfill some sort of external motivation to do this. But it was also intrinsic. It was also internal, where I was like, hey, this actually aligns with like who I am, what I want to do.
Interesting. Yeah, because I feel like a lot of today's expectations, like of kids to go to college and kids to do certain majors and whatever, a lot of times it is like to fulfill kind of like parents' dreams or grandparents' dreams or whatever it might be. Like, I definitely know that a lot of my friends had a ton of social pressure, like to do certain majors or whatever. And for better or for worse, like obviously I don't think that going and pursuing a degree or whatever is ever going to be something that like is a bad thing, but for some people it ends up being like, okay, I got this thing, and like now I'm just now realizing that the only reason why I did it was to like make my parents happy, and like now what, and that's like a hard kind of crossroads to be at.
Yeah, and to each their own. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being influenced by your parents. They're the largest influences in our lives.
That's very true.
And so if they have passions, if they have skills that they've passed down, if there's certain things that you really revere in your parents and you want to be like them, or if you want their approval, that's natural. But if it's unnaturally in terms of against who you are at your core, that's when it becomes a problem, because then you're being inauthentic, you're not living in truth.
How do you think, like you kind of mentioned this earlier when you were talking about traveling and going to different places when you were younger and starting like a new life, you can kind of recreate yourself. I feel like you had opportunities to kind of figure out who you really were, because I think a lot of times when you're a kid, you just end up getting involved in all the stuff that your friends at school are into without ever really thinking about, is this something that I actually even enjoy or whatever. Like, I just like all the stuff that my friends like because they're my friends. Like, we go over and we play soccer. Maybe my friend is really into soccer, but I don't even really care, but I play with them just because, and then eventually I kind of get good at it and I end up being on the team, and then I realize later on down the road I never even liked soccer that much or whatever. So like being able to kind of recreate yourself in all these new environments, do you feel like that kind of helped you like really solidify what you were wanting to do? Because I think a lot of kids just get lost in that.
I think that's where my story or my experience is a little bit more uncommon.
Yeah.
I grew up with two very separate lives, two different parents. So around my mom, I was my mom's Matt. Around my dad, I was my dad's Matt. And they liked different things. We did different things together. So I was two very different people with my different parents. But when I was really myself was in those times in between. It was when I would go to the bathroom and wash my hands and be looking at myself in the mirror and talk to myself. Or it would be at night when I'm not interacting with my mom or dad, and it's that inner dialogue that I think really makes you who you are, when you're not trying to seek parental approval or fit in somehow. And I think I got to know myself at a young age through that, and those seeds were planted young, and I don't think I figured it out until relatively recently. But I think that's a really important thing for everyone to go through is a lot of introspection, a lot of self-knowledge before you pick whatever it is you want to do with your life.
Yeah, because I feel like, I know you've done tons of traveling and stuff like that, and we can kind of get into that, but I feel like traveling is one of the best ways to really get to know yourself, especially like solo traveling, because you're meeting people for the first time. They have no I'll move this.
You're good.
People that you're meeting have no expectations of who you are. They have no expectations of who you need to be or anything like that. You're meeting people for the very first time. And also, like, one of my first times when I was overseas, like, I remember for the first month, I was always scanning people's faces, like trying to find someone I knew. Because like locally, you're kind of like scanning faces in your database of like, do I know this person? Do I know this person? Do I know this person? And after about a month, that kind of like shut off for me, because I'm like, I don't know anyone here and nobody knows me. And that's kind of freeing and like kind of liberating, because you're like, for the first time, no one has any expectations. Like, because I grew up in Atlanta area, I've lived here my whole life, so like I kind of I'm a little bit envious of a childhood where it's a little more all over the place. Obviously, there's again like pros of being in one spot. I've got a lot of like cool childhood friends and memories that like are still here, but being able to like figure that out kind of early on is pretty dope.
Yeah, and something my mom instilled in me at a very young age was, you can learn something from everyone. I mean, there's really no such thing as a stranger, and she led by example with that. I mean, she would she would make friends with a CEO next to her in a plane or a homeless person. And there was no difference in her demeanor when she did that. She made friends everywhere she went. She uncovered interesting stories, and just growing up, we have no idea how impressionable we are at a young age and how much we pick up from our parents. So I'm so grateful that I had a mom like her that really taught me that lesson early on, because when I travel, looking around for people I already know, and not that I don't like the people that I already know, but I almost avoid those people. I seek out new experiences, new people, because I want to inject as much information and experience into my life as possible.
Yeah. That's why I feel like people really like music festivals, because they feel like it's a place where they can be themselves. Like, it's cool to be like weird or whatever. Like, I can dress weird and like I can lose my friends for a couple hours and like make some friends with some new people or whatever. Like, I think that's why a lot of kids are like drawn to that right now.
It's a good experimental ground.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely. Okay, so let's move forward a little bit. So obviously you said you went to like Westminster, which is it Westminster or Westminster?
Minster. Yeah.
Okay. Westminster.
A lot of people say minister.
Yeah, because it's like minister is like a normal word, and West is a normal word.
Yeah, just think of it like Westminster Abbey in London.
Yeah.
It's the
Westminster. If you say it with a British accent, it makes...
I'll let you handle that.
Yeah. No, but anyway, so you went to Westminster. Westminster, I already fucked it up. So, and then you ended up going to UGA, right? Mm-hmm. So what was that like? And kind of like, I know your story with Brawl for a Cause kind of started there because you hosted your first like boxing event there. So kind of tell us about that.
Sure. So, grew up playing soccer. Got recruited for soccer from a few small colleges. A lot of the smaller colleges when I visited, they felt a lot like Westminster. So, I went up to Davidson, went up to Dartmouth, Wake Forest. These schools were like small private schools. Even like the architecture was similar to Westminster. And I was just like I did Westminster and I loved it. It set me up amazingly for life. I really love that place, but I wanted something different for college. And so when I went to Georgia, I chose Georgia for two reasons. One, it's fundamentally different from Westminster. Big public school, big melting pot from people all over the state and all over the country. Big football program. We weren't that great at football at Westminster. We were better at the country club sports like tennis and cross country and stuff. And so I thought it would be a cool kind of culture shock, a way to grow personally.
Totally.
The other thing is I didn't have to pay any money. This Hope Scholarship, full academic scholarships, like I didn't have to incur student debt, which is crippling, which I'm sure you're benefiting from, withdrawing from school.
Yeah.
Like that instantly creates a fear mindset of when you graduate, you have to dig yourself out of this hole immediately instead of go out and explore the world, learn yourself, and pick something you actually want to do. So it really I think it sets our generation up for failure. So
but the Hope Scholarship is really good. That is like a really cool thing that we have here.
Yeah, and there's that exists in Georgia, but even outside of Georgia, there's so many resources that if you just do a little bit of searching, and you put in a little bit of effort, there's a lot of scholarship money out there. Mm-hmm. Where you can mitigate some of that debt. But anyway, I picked Georgia, and I knew I wanted to be in a fraternity. My mom was fundamentally against it. My dad was in a fraternity, and it's just a life experience that I wanted to have. So at Georgia, it's summer rush and fall pledgeship. So I rushed over the summer. I found a group of guys that I really liked. I really connected with the president of one of the fraternities. His name was Michael Waldron, and the fraternity was Kappa Sigma, and Waldron had this crazy idea to do an interfraternity boxing event. And he tells me about this, like, this is one of my first college experiences, right? So it plants this seed in my head.
And he's like probably a senior or something, and you're like a freshman?
He was a junior, yeah.
Okay, so he's definitely a little bit older, and he's just like planning this idea.
Yeah, I really looked up to him. He's a cool guy, smoking hot girlfriend, job at a cool bar. I want to be like him, you know? And so anyway, like we started talking about this idea, and I grew up doing some Taekwondo, and when I was like 14, one of my uncles, Uncle Andy, gave me a pair of boxing gloves for Christmas, but I only had one pair, and I would host a lot of parties. You know where this is going. I would host a lot of parties at my house in high school, and there would come a certain part of the night where we'd go in the backyard, and that one pair of gloves would get split up between two people. So whoever was favored would get the left glove, the non-dominant hand, and whoever was the underdog would get the right hand. And so it was, one hand versus one hand, the other hand could kind of block, but we were just going at each other with one, and that was kind of the beginning of maybe a Brawl for a cause, but at least of my infatuation with boxing.
Maybe brawling for the wrong cause.
Yeah,
Brawl for fun.
Right.
Yeah.
And
did anyone ever get like seriously injured or anything?
Yeah, I broke one of my buddy's noses. Spencer Namnoon. We were in senior week, and senior week's a little bit of a party, and we went on the backyard, and I cracked him. Sorry, Spencer.
Did you have the non-dominant or the dominant?
I think I had non-dominant.
Damn.
But I mean, it really turns out, like, especially when you start actually getting into boxing, it's really just different ways to use different tools. It's like chess. Like a knight may only be worth 3 points, but it can fork your rook and queen, which are worth 9 and 5 points. You can use them in different ways.
Yeah.
It's all about how you use what you have.
It's very true.
So anyway, I find out that Georgia has a boxing program, and it's for students. It's $2 per class, so it's like pretty cheap. Like everyone's living on a budget in college, so cost really
doesn't
matters.
get much better than that.
So $2 boxing class. I was like, you know what? Like I think I'm going to make boxing a thing. My older brother in this fraternity. Well, he wasn't my older brother yet, but he would
in the fraternity. Your older brother, yeah.
Yeah, he would become my older brother in the fraternity. He's playing this boxing event, and I kind of have this interest in it, and my mom kind of wouldn't let me do it like competitively when I was young, so it was kind of an act of rebellion too, and an expression of independence. And
joining a fraternity and boxing,
that's
two
right.
things my mom didn't want me to do.
I grew up without video games. My mom was really against wasting brain power or time in front of a television of any kind.
Do you like regret that at all, or do you are you thankful for that?
Both. I mean, it has pros and cons like anything else. So
do you suck at video games now?
No, because when I got to college, I bought an Xbox and I binged. So and this is like a truism. Whenever any parents are very against a certain thing, eventually that kid's gonna try it.
It's just like prohibition.
Yeah.
It's like you're gonna figure out a way. It's like the best parenting is maybe you should do it, maybe you shouldn't. It's not that good, but it's also not that bad.
Or just outline pros and cons and let the kid make the decision.
Yeah, because then you don't even know how to rebel. Like if you're trying to rebel, you're like, well, maybe I don't even know what I should do. Like Chris D'Elia, the comedian, he talked in one of his recent bits. He talks about how his parents told him drugs are out there. They're kind of they're not that great, but they're also can be fun. So whatever. He's like, I don't know what they're telling me to do. They tell me to do drugs. Maybe I shouldn't do drugs to rebel. And so he never drank. He never did any drugs. But it's just kind of funny because I'm like, that's pretty smart actually, because you're totally right. Anytime your parents are so hardline against something, you just want to know. It's like, Adam and Eve. It's like you can do everything in this garden except for eat that one fruit. It's like, I'm gonna go eat that fruit. It's totally.
Well, and what happens is they probably don't seek out that fruit. Someone like that snake comes up and whispers in their ear, "Hey, I've done this and I didn't die. Hey, I've done this and I'm okay, and not just okay, I'm better than I was before." Drugs can give you a really good perspective on yourself and your life. It gives you a different lens to look at your ego through other people through. So, drugs can be horrible. They can ruin your life. I mean, and there's countless stories like that. They can also be a tool. Just like chess, just like boxing. It's all how you use these things that you have access to. It's more about who you are rather than what the thing is.
I like that. Yeah, it's totally true. So you used boxing, and to go back to the story, because I derailed us. I said you're rebelling from your mom. So you said you're kind of joining the fraternity, got the boxing thing, you're doing $2 boxing classes, and...
Yeah, so I started it as a hobby, and Waldron and I kind of start putting pieces in place for this tournament. He does some research on what insurance takes. He runs it up the ladder of our national fraternity organization. It's hey, what would this take to be an annual fundraiser for our philanthropy? So we start learning some about the space, but before we're able to set a date, recruit fighters, all that kind of stuff, our fraternity gets kicked off campus. Our charter is revoked, our social calendar disappears. So this idea kind of dies with the fraternity. And so I was bummed out. I was psyched about this idea. It was one of the big reasons why I joined that fraternity. And I'd been boxing for a while, and I didn't know if I wanted to compete in this event we were planning or help plan it. But I wanted to be involved in it somehow. So it was just kind of something that it was a bummer that it didn't work out. It was kind of like the first strike. If I was swinging to make Brawl for a cause a thing, it was the first time where I swung and missed.
Yeah.
But after the fraternity disbanded, it really opened up a lot of space and opportunity to get involved in other ways at UGA. So I joined student government, and then I joined a philanthropy called UGA Heroes. And UGA Heroes provided about 70% of the funding for a nonprofit called Hero for Children, which benefits children in Georgia affected by HIV and AIDS. So I'm really passionate about youth development. I had a lot of mentors and camp counselors and things pour into me growing up. And then
camp is the bomb. Just wanted to put that out there. Camp is the shit.
And then I became a camp counselor, so I kind of went through that whole life cycle. And,
Nice.
And I was doing that through college too. So the fact that this nonprofit was helping kids, but not just like normal kids, like kids that really got dealt a bad hand. Because if they're affected by HIV/AIDS, their parents probably have it, and they were kind of born into this situation. It's not like they were doing the things that give them AIDS, and it was like their decision that that gave them it. You know, So
it's messed up.
It really struck me as something that was worth pouring my time into, maybe more than the usual fraternity activities of hanging around the house and socials and going out. And so I really poured myself into that. And I worked my way up to the executive board. And one day we were having our first big kind of board meeting of the year. And the founder of UGA Hero came to oversee this meeting and kind of kick it off and tell his story and that kind of thing. So before he gets into like who he is and the founding story and all that kind of stuff, he's like, okay, like I'd love to go around the room, like say something about yourself and like tell us about your experience in this organization and what you think we're doing well and what you think we can improve on. So people start going around. And what I realize is like, you know, everyone that goes really isn't saying any sort of criticism. Everyone's like patting themselves, not themselves, but like the organization on the back, like we're doing a great job. We're raising $350,000 a year. We're one of the biggest philanthropies on campus. Like we're doing really good work. And I believe that too. But there were ways to improve. So when it got around to me, I outlined my thoughts. I said, I think we're doing way too many small events that just aren't moving the needle. I think we're annoying our base with all these percentage nights and all these car washes and bake sales and stuff that just
That's really,
everyone does this. And like, why not rally around like 1, 2, maybe 3 big events a year that can really move the needle? And Garrett, the founder of the organization, he stops. He's like, what's your name? And it was my first time on the board, so we really hadn't had any interaction yet. I said, I'm Matt. He said, can I see outside? I was like,
he fires you.
I was like, shit, I'm in trouble, right? like I get that, that feeling where like your stomach, like your heart jumps up in your throat, and like
Matt Thomas to the principal's office.
Yeah, it's like that
feeling.
Adrenaline rush, like fight or flight. And so I walk out, I'm like, what's about to happen? And he's like, I think you're right, and I want to hear more of your ideas. What are you doing for dinner? I said, I don't have plans. And he's like, I'd like to treat you to dinner. I said, okay.
Just turns out to be a date. No, I'm just kidding.
No, wasn't that.
Sorry.
Maybe a date with destiny.
Yeah, date with destiny. There we go.
So
that's really awesome, though. So he saw that you had these new and fresh ideas, and he probably kind of agreed. Because I can totally relate to being annoyed by certain philanthropies and stuff. It's like, dude, it's not that I don't believe in your thing, but it's like, Jesus, like give me a second to breathe. Like I get it, but like, maybe once or twice a year, I'm like stoked about it, but I can't. It's hard to get to be stoked about someone else's thing for all year round.
Yeah, and I'll come back to this part of the story, but just to reinforce your point today, a lot of people ask me why we don't do more Brawl for a Cause events. We have enough interest to do an event a month, but the reason why is the same thing that I believe is we do it once a year and we do it all the way.
Yeah,
we do it high quality. We make it so like you got to be there.
Yeah.
For that one.
It's like the Olympics.
If we do it every month, like you can miss like 10. And then, we're just kind of diluting the whole experience because there's so many of them. So anyway, we go to Transmet in Athens. We have some pizza. We start kicking around ideas. And I bring up this boxing idea that died with the fraternity. I said, we're called Hero. We're heroes for children. Heroes fight for what they believe in. Like we could do this charity boxing event and do it for UGA Heroes as a fundraiser. And he loved the idea. He said, where would you want to do something like this? I said, I don't know where to do an event. I've never done an event before. There's like the Classic Center. That's probably too big though. Maybe like a bar, like a music venue. And we were right across the street from the Georgia Theater. Georgia Theater the year before had burned to the ground. And they had rebuilt it and it was immaculate. Like they rebuilt it from the ashes like a phoenix. And
I wondered why that place was so nice. I didn't know it burned down.
Yeah, it burned down.
It is really cool now.
Burned down in 2009. I actually had a ticket to the concert the night it burned down. It was a Perpetual Groove concert.
Whoa.
And they offered a refund for everyone that bought a ticket if you turned back in your ticket. And I turned it back in for the $30 or whatever it was, but I wish I still had that ticket because that place, that venue changed my life. That night, Garrett and I snuck in to the Georgia Theater. We talked to the front desk. We were like, "Hey, we're planning an event here. We just need to check out the stage real quick." We know, we Googled like the owner of the theater. Oh, we know Will, and we'll be right out. And Garrett, that was Garrett. Like he can talk his way into any room, and he's an amazing storyteller. And so we walk in, and the intention was really just to go up on the stage and figure out if a ring could fit on it. So we kind of like step it out on the stage, and we figure out, I think this could work. And so we start kind of like kicking around ideas about this, and he really empowered, he has a lot of other stuff going on, serial entrepreneur, he was running another business, he had already started this nonprofit, he was doing all this stuff, but he really empowered me to like run with this project, like this is your thing, like do it all the way. And so I started reaching out to the guy that we Googled, Will. He passed me off to the booking agent for the Georgia Theater, Scott Orvald, who now does Terminal West and Live Nation, all this big stuff. And so after probably 15 times trying to reach out to Scott, he finally was like, "All right, kid, like, come on, I'll give you 5 minutes." And so I pitched this idea, and he's like, "Okay, what do you need?" I said, I want a Saturday. I want it in spring, so we aren't competing with football. And I kind of paint my vision. And he's like, "Okay, Saturdays are our most expensive rental date. A lot of them are already booked for the spring, but I like your idea, and we haven't done something like this before. Like, I'll see what we can do." And so he finds a date. He while he's kind of searching for a date, I bring this idea to the executive board of UGA Heroes, and I already kind of have buy-in from the founder, but he's no longer a direct managerial kind of role. He's no longer running the organization, so he doesn't really have decision-making power. Like his seal of approval meant something, but it wasn't like it was a shoe-in. Mm-hmm. So I still had to pitch this idea because it would take a budget, it would take a lot of resources to like promote it and recruit fighters, and there's like an insurance component, and there's risk associated with combat sports and all this stuff. So I pitched them the idea, and they told me what they needed to see in order to approve it and run it up the ladder to the executive director of the whole nonprofit in Atlanta. And so I went and I did all this work. I put together the proposal. I brought it back to the next board meeting, and they were like, "Hey, we talked to the ED, and we really like your idea. We just think that this year we didn't really like plan for this, so it's not in the budget, and there is a lot of risk. We'd like to look into it more. So I think we'll wait till next year." And at this point, I was a junior in college. So the next year is like my senior year, and I was gearing up for law school, so I was going to be taking LSAT and all this kind of stuff. So I was like, I don't want to wait a year, and essentially, like, putting it off was essentially a no. It was like, wait. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm at a crossroads. I can either take this as another loss and basically strike out, or I can just do this myself. Like, if they don't want to take on the risk, like, it's not like I have assets. It's like they're gonna sue me, right? Yeah. So I just decided, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot. And like I said, I didn't have any assets, I didn't have any money, and I had to put a down payment on the theater. So I knew I had to sell sponsorships in order to make this thing work. So my very first sponsorship meeting was with a big health and wellness club called the Omni Club. And they had a couple locations in Athens, but the biggest and the first was where the manager of it worked out of. And so I, again, reached out to him however many times it took, and set up a meeting with him. And I sat down and I gave him my pitch. And walking in, I was just praying for $1,000, because $1,000 would knock out, one, it would cover the deposit so I could actually set a date, and two, it would knock out about a fourth of my overhead. I thought I could do the event for about $4,000. It ended up being a lot more, but I was very ambitious. I thought I could sell 4,000 tickets. I still have never sold 4,000 tickets. Like I was like, my ambition and my delusion was very high, but I pitched him this vision, and he looks at me, a guy named Curtis Adams. He works for X3 Sports now, which is actually our biggest partner for Brawl for a Cause. They train all of our guys for free. They're awesome. And so Curtis looks at me back in the day, and he's like, dude, you lucked out. Like, we are launching a boxing program in January, and our proposed date was January 21st. And their whole intention with the boxing program was get to, sorority girls and fraternity guys in the gym punching and kicking bags. I was like, well, this is basically going to be a fraternity fight night. I mean, it's all student organizations, but a lot of it's going to be Greek. And he said, we want our name all over this. I'll give you $2,500.
Did you even pitch the 1,000 at first, or he came up with the 2,500 right on the spot?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I get goosebumps. I just got goosebumps. Like, I get goosebumps to this day talking about that, because have you read The Alchemist? I feel like you're an Alchemist kind of guy.
Yeah, I've never actually read it, but I always feel like it's like everyone in my circle is always like saying stuff.
No,
like,
go now. You'll knock it out in 3 days. It's essentially a children's book, but it's the most important book you'll read. I can't express that to you enough. I reread it every year. But there's a concept in the Alchemist that when you get onto your life path, when you start pursuing what he calls your personal legend, what really equates to your destiny, there's an element of beginner's luck. That the universe or God or whatever you believe in gives you a little nudge in the right direction, helps you out. And that was my beginner's luck, is Curtis saying, hey, I know you have this financial pressure and you have this vision, and it aligns with exactly what we're doing. Like, here you go. And so that gave me a ton of energy to go out and sell another $500 sponsorship, and to start recruiting fighters, and to start marketing this thing. And I had a girlfriend at the time, and she was great. She was very supportive, but I basically ignored her for like 3 months, and it ultimately it probably led to the end of our relationship, because I just went into like full-on focus mode. I got obsessed. Yeah. And this is something that's a cycle in my life. Like, when I get into something, I get all the way in. And so this obsession took over to where it was all I was doing. It was all I was talking about. Even in classes, I was sending emails to people for Brawl for a cause I wasn't paying attention, and all this stuff, right? So I'll fast forward to the event itself. I ended up recruiting 44 fighters to fight, and that's the most I've ever recruited.
So 22 fights.
Exactly.
Wow.
So even to this day, like, we've never had an event with this many fights. Okay. And so back then, I didn't really have much help. Like, there were a few people from Heroes that still volunteered and helped out.
What was the philanthropy that was it for a philanthropy? It was just throwing the event.
It was still for UGA Heroes.
Oh, okay.
I was still on the executive board. I still believed in it, so I was still going to write a check to them, even though they didn't want to assume the risk.
So it wasn't an official UGA Heroes event, but like, philanthropies aren't going to turn down your check. Like, you can still give all the money. That makes sense.
And I fundamentally believed in what they were doing. So it wasn't like, they said no to me, like, screw them. It was like, okay, like, you don't want to assume the risk, I will. And like, we'll still do this for Hero. And they still helped, like, sell some tickets and stuff. Like, it was definitely still a lot of a Hero crowd, because that's what I was in.
But they weren't fronting the budget and all that stuff.
It wasn't their name on any of the deposits. They didn't give me a budget. It wasn't anything like that.
Interesting.
So
that's pretty awesome.
So anyway, my goal was to raise $12,000, and that was a representative number to represent $1 for each child affected by HIV/AIDS in the state of Georgia, and we ended up raising way over $12,000, but we had a really high expense too. So we weren't able to donate that full amount. We were able to donate $6,000. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself though. So the week of the event, I don't sleep. I am. Events are extremely stressful. I don't know if you ever planned one, but there are a lot of fires to put out. There's a lot of unforeseen things, especially for a first event. And I was doing my best to navigate my way through it, and I was doing my best to cut every dollar that I could from our expenses, because I wanted to reach our goal of $12,000. And one of the ways I cut expenses was the guy that owned the ring was one of my boxing coaches, a guy named Chris Jordan. He and Ramon Hayes are who got me into boxing. And Chris said, I can hire 2 of my guys that usually help me set this up for, like $150, $200 each. And I was like, that's $400 I don't need to spend. Like, I'll help you build the ring. So I'll carry everything in. Like, I'll set up with you. You don't have to hire those guys. He's like, okay. Like, it's big steel beams, all these like large pieces of plywood. Like, it's a lot of work. And because the theater's a music venue, they have as many concerts as they possibly can. The night before us, it's a Friday night. Of course, they're having a concert. They aren't done breaking down until 2 a.m., so we don't start setting up until 2:30 or 3. It takes 4.5 hours to build a ring. So the night before the event, I'm up all night and I'm sweating and, building this thing with Chris. And
I'm sure all the theater people are long gone. Like you guys
no one's there. Yeah, it's just him and I.
Just you and this dude building
it's him
the
and
ring.
I mean, they let us in at 2:30, but then they're like, peace, we'll see you at like 10 a.m., because we were supposed to open doors at 12 for the event. It was going to be an all-afternoon long event.
Okay.
So now we do 15 fights. Takes about 4.5 hours.
Did you sleep?
Back then, no, I didn't sleep at all.
Damn.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, you're getting ahead of your story. Don't want to.
Yeah. So anyway, so we finished setting up the ring, and it's like 6:30 about, and Chris is like, "Hey, I'm going to catch a few hours of sleep." I said, "Okay, I'm going to keep setting up here because we need to put the banner up. We had a bunch of boxes of T-shirts. It's a whole other story. Don't invest in T-shirts for a first event." I was like,
T-shirt inventory.
Yeah, there's a price break at 832 tickets or 832 T-shirts. It's some random number that a T-shirt printing company gives you to like incentivize you to buy more. So I was like, I'm going to hit that price break so I'm efficient when I sell the 832 T-shirts. I'm going to make more of a margin on my, I thought I was being smart. Those T-shirts lasted 5 years.
Yeah.
So it was totally unnecessary expense for that first event. It basically turned into just like I was handing out T-shirts all the time.
Yeah.
It just turned into a marketing expense instead of something that was revenue driving. So anyway, all this stuff still needed to be set up. So I start setting it up, and it's around 7. I kind of take a break. I go up to the balcony of the theater, and the rebuild of the theater is 4 levels, and the top level has this awesome bar, and there's a stained glass window behind it that faces the street, and the stained glass window kind of faces east. And so when the sun starts rising, there's really no like big lights on in the theater like when there's a concert or event or whatever. So the only light was this sunlight coming through the stained glass window, and it kind of lit up the stage. And I was sitting there on the balcony, and I was looking down, and I see the ring that I literally just built with my bare hands. I see the poster, the banner that said Bulldog Brawl on it. This idea that I came up with in my head, and that had failed with the fraternity and failed with Hero, and these boxes of T-shirts and like all this stuff. I'm taking it all in. I'm getting goosebumps again. Like it hits me that in just a few hours, hundreds of people were going to line up to buy tickets to an experience that I came up with in my head, and that I worked so hard for. And I completely broke down. I started just sobbing. So teardrops are going down, from the balcony to the pit of the theater, and I should have known in that moment that I was going to be a law school dropout that had to do this for the rest of my life. Like I was hooked, and it took me a little bit longer to figure it out, but that was definitely the start of it. Was that moment. And that day we ended up selling 864 tickets.
And 864 T-shirts? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I wish. We only had 832 T-shirts.
832, my bad.
But yeah,
my
I thought
bad.
everyone was gonna buy one because like dope event, like take a T-shirt home. It was like we sold like 11 T-shirts or something. And we had to give away like a piece of pizza with it. Like we had pizza at the event. It's like if you buy a T-shirt, you get a piece of pizza too.
God.
It was like, it was terrible.
That's kind of hilarious. Sorry.
Yeah,
sorry for laughing, but
no, epic fail. I laughed too. I mean, to this day we don't have T-shirts. I mean, we get our sponsors Lululemon, so we'll make stuff for our brawlers, but we don't do T-shirts.
Yeah,
it's still like a pain.
Yeah,
it's like a scar.
Yeah. I feel like T-shirts, like over time, it became the easy giveaway, and so at a certain point in everyone's life, they look in their like T-shirt bin of just all these T-shirts, like where the fuck did I get all these T-shirts?
Dude, I have 1,000 T-shirts.
Yeah. I had to purge a lot. I had to purge a lot.
Goodwill.
Yeah, exactly.
Boom. That goes straight there.
Exactly.
So anyway, 864 people. All 22 fights went off without too much of a hitch. I mean, there were stressful moments and dealing with USA Boxing and our doctor and all this stuff.
Were they all one at a time? Because there was only one ring on the stage, right?
That's right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the event took about 6.5 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
A little bit more. And so the event ends. I'm exhausted. I go out. I celebrate with all the guys that fought, and a guy I actually had on my Brawl for a Cause podcast yesterday morning. Adam Berlin, he owned Moonshine and Silver Dollar and City Bar. He owns Big Sky and a big entertainment company called AMP. And he was one of our earliest supporters. He and his partner Juan and his other partner Evan Rosenberg, all of them did our weigh-in events and our after parties. And So our after party was at Silver Dollar, and after that I passed out. I remember waking up, and my roommate comes and is like banging on my little, it wasn't a dorm. We were living in a downtown loft, a little like cubby that I slept in. He was banging on my cubby door. I'm like, dude, I need to sleep. Like, I'm exhausted. I'm beat. And he's like, you got to see this. And he opens the door and he throws the Athens Banner-Herald, the newspaper for all of Athens, not just Georgia, like UGA. He throws it onto my bed, and I look, and we're front page cover story.
Dang.
And I'm like, what happened? Like, what is this real? And I look and I read the whole story. And I'm like, oh my God! Like, I didn't even know they were there. I didn't even know they were interested. And here we are. And someone from local news calls me, and there's an interview, and my mom calls me crying when she hears it. And like, all these things happen that just like totally reinforce this hard work and this vision coming to fruition and all this stuff. And so, especially like the week of the event and immediately after the event, I was like, I'm done. Like, that was a lot. That was way more than I bargained for. I'm not doing another one of these. And the other thing that reinforced that was, out of the 44 people that I signed up, about 40 of them were like my friends, like people that I like personally convinced to do this.
Yeah.
And you can do the math. Like, there's only 22 bounds. There can only be 22 winners. So a lot of my friends got their asses kicked. And I had some like guilt about that. So I was like, I don't know if I want to do this again. Because like I'm basically persuading these people into like physical harm.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if that was a good thing because I hadn't done it myself. And so
but also there's a chance for redemption though. Like, there's always that second shot.
So a lot of people start reaching out to me, and they're like, hey, like, awesome event, want to be involved. Like, do you need volunteers? I was like, well, I could really used you 3 months ago.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, I don't know if there's...
putting that ring together, I could have used some volunteers.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do another event,
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you should, and if you do, like, I'll help. I was like, okay. And some other people reached out. I was like, hey, I was at the event. Like, I really want to try boxing. Like, where can I take classes, or can I sign up for the next event? I was like, I don't know if I'm doing another event. They were like, well, if you do, like, I'll do it. I was like, okay. So a few months later, one of the guys I mentioned that was a partner in Silver Dollar and the other bars and businesses, Evan Rosenberg, put on a Georgia fight night. And it was exclusively Greek. And it was at another bar, and there wasn't really a charitable component. So it was a different model, and they were my friends, and so like I wanted to help out. And it was a perfect opportunity for me to enter the ring, to put myself in the shoes of all the guys that I had just persuaded to do this. And before I decided to do another one or not, like, see if it was actually a good thing. I could walk the walk, I could be in their shoes. So I signed up to fight. And I was living downtown above a bar. I was going out most nights. I was very social, and I basically shut everything in my life down. I say, okay, I'm not going to drink. I'm going to like train at least 4 or 5 times a week, and I'm going to do this all the way. And so I train for a couple months, and I lose a bunch of weight. I get down to, I walk around now like 210. I was down at like 180.
Nice.
And I was in like, at least at that time, the best shape of my life. And so there's nothing like a first fight. I listened to your last podcast with Senior Smash,
Yes.
and he talks about his first fight, and it's something that only fighters understand. Because you can, and I tried to do this. I tried to put myself in the shoes of these people that were in the first Bulldog Brawl, and I was like, yeah, it's scary, but it's like competing in soccer in high school. It's like competing in any other sport, like, but it's not. Because it's just you in there, and you're against another person where it's just him in there, and you too. Like, it doesn't matter how much training you've done. It doesn't matter who's favored, who's not. Anything can happen in that ring. Even if you're the ultimate underdog, even if you're Rocky against Apollo Creed, you land that one punch. That's all it takes, and that can be in the last second of the fight after you haven't landed a single punch. So it's the highest possible stakes, and I'll never forget my first fight. I walked out to "Mama Said Knock You Out" by LL Cool J. I thought I was cool, and that's probably the most cliche song you can walk out to. And so I'm all hyped up, and then my opponent walks out to AC/DC, and that's what I should have picked, because that's it's grit. I mean, that's good. So his song pumps me up too, and the guy I was fighting, a guy named Jake LaPointe, He was short, stocky, super strong, weightlifting background, played football, tough kid. And I'm longer, lankier, more of an outside fighter. So the matchup was going to be, if I could jab, stay away, kind of pick apart Adam, wear him out, I was going to win. And if he could get in tight, get inside my range, land some big shots, he was going to win. And
you knew the matchup like pretty far in advance?
I knew what he looked up.
Okay.
I knew what he looked like. Oh yeah, and I trained.
But there
to be
wasn't
an
like
outside
fight
fighter.
footage you could look at and like see how he fought or anything.
We were both first timers. We were both in the same boat, and like honestly, technique, even at that stage, like I thought I was good, but like especially now, I realize like man, I was a kid, and I was barely proficient at boxing, and so even preparing for a specific fighter, and this is advice that I give brawlers now. It's like just be your best. Don't train to fight someone else. Just be your best. Because even if you're like, oh, well, my coach is telling me that he's an inside fighter, so I need to really practice my pivot hook. It's like, you weren't going to be pivot hooking in your first fight. Like, come on. And so anyway, the first round starts, and we touch gloves. And I have so much adrenaline that there's about 600-700 people in the crowd. I don't hear any of them. They might as well not be there. I mean, it's a void. And that's something that's consistent with the people I talk to in Brawl for Calls, the other fighters I talk to. You get in the zone, you can't help but get in the zone. If you're paying attention to what the crowd's doing, you're doing something wrong. You need to be fully present when you're in combat against someone else. And so I'm jabbing, I'm circling. Things are going well for me. He's not really getting into me yet. I've landed a shot or two. And about 35 seconds in, he catches me in a corner. So I can't circle anymore. He shuts down my space. It's kind of like a chess game where the more you can control the board and your opponent's pieces, the less they can do to you. The more you control the outcome of the fight and the pace. And so he shuts me down, and so my back's up against the rope, and he kind of ducks down. So it's kind of like a lunge, right? So he's down low. And I throw a right cross down at the top of his head, and at the same time that my fist connects, my elbow locks out, he comes up into my punch. Ooh. With the top of his head. So his whole body is behind this movement, and it's really just my arm thrown down at him. So all of that force, goes up through my wrist, through my elbow, into this joint, and that's the only one that's not stacked, right? So it pushes my shoulder out of socket. Ooh. So it goes out exteriorly, so backwards. And my shoulder had come out a lot over the course of my life. I have very loose joints, so when I was playing soccer, I had a really long throw-in because I was hyper flexible in my joints. I could take the ball down to like basically my butt. And I could throw it to the back post. So it was like a corner kick for our team. We won 2 state championships at Westminster in soccer, and for 2 years that I was in high school, I had the most assists on the team, and it was because of my throw-ins. Huh. And so I have these loose joints.
Seems like a funny thing in soccer. Like I was the best at throwing.
It's weird. Yeah, it's definitely weird. That my nickname on the team was Special Teams, and there's no special teams really in soccer. So
that's funny.
Anyway, my shoulder comes out, and I'm used to popping it back in, but still, that's not what you want to happen 30 seconds in the first round. So it comes out, I'm like, shit, like I gotta get this thing back in. So I turn my back to my opponent. Big no-no in amateur boxing. It counts as a knockdown.
Really?
Yeah. So I started getting a standing 8 count, like a stoppage. So I have 8 seconds to literally pull myself together. And I'm screaming at myself. I'm slamming my shoulder up against the corner of the ring. I'm trying to get it relocated, right?
Yeah.
And I'm so tense. I'm slamming it, and it's just not going back. And the referee, who I got to know later, she became a friend. Her name's Kavina Franklin. She gets the 8 count, and she said, "Can you continue?" I said, "Yes." I'm standing there with my shoulder out of socket. I'm in a tank top, so you can like see it looks messed up. And
it's just hanging there.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like supporting it too while I'm saying it to her. And she's like, "No, like you need to go see the doctor." I'm like no doctor in their right mind is gonna let some 21-year-old kid in his first fight that isn't fighting to put food on the table for his family or something. It's just like a fraternity fight. It's for fun.
Yeah.
Not going to let me continue. So in my head, I've been so tense trying to get it back in to continue the fight. And in that moment, I just relax. I'm like, this isn't in my hands anymore. Like, I'm going to walk over to this doctor. He's going to call it. So when I relax and I start walking over to the doctor and I make eye contact with him, he looks at my shoulder, he looks back in my eyes, he kind of shakes his head. I'm like, okay, Like, this is my story. Like, it's over. And when I relax, all the muscles around my shoulder that had been tense and holding it out of socket, they relax too. My shoulder slides back into place as I'm walking over to him. So it sounds peaceful when I say it, but it hurt like hell.
Yeah.
And I get over to him, and I'm kind of wincing, and he says, "Son, are you hurt?" And I said, "All due respect, I'm in a fight." And he said, "Okay, well, can you fight?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Okay, I need to check you out." I said, "Okay." And my arm's super weak. I mean, it was just out of socket. So I hold up my arms, and he's like pushing them down. I'm just trying to make my left go down as fast as my right goes down. I'm trying to like just anything to be able to continue. And he kind of looks at me. He knows what's up, but I probably had some fire in my eye. And he says, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I said, "Absolutely." And he said, "Okay." And so he sends me back in. I have another minute 30 to finish the first round. And I have no confidence in my right arm. I know if I throw it again, it's definitely over. Like, the doctor's not going to let me continue again if it comes out again. So I don't throw my right again. I'm basically fighting one-handed. And Jake, to his credit, knows I'm hurt and wants to finish the fight, as he should. And so he's coming at me, throwing big windmill kind of shots, overhand rights, big hooks. And so, he's landing some. He's definitely winning the round. He gets me up against the ropes, and it's just beating on me. And the first round ends, and I go sit in my corner. And my coach, Ramon Hayes, big 6'5", black dude, really strong, really intense. He was a professional heavyweight. He gets in my face, and he's like, "Don't say anything. I know what happened. I'm not going to watch you get your ass kicked. So you need to go out there and you need to show me that you can throw your right, or I'm going to call this fight." I said, "You're not calling the fight." He said, "Okay, show me something." The second round, I go out. I wait for those windmill shots to come. And I see an opening, because windmill shot, they're big, they're powerful, they can knock you out, but they're also slow. And the best punch in boxing is the quick punch, the one that your opponent doesn't expect, they can't defend. And so I throw a quick straight shot right on his chin, land it. He stumbles back into the ropes, and I'll never forget the
With
look
your
on his
right?
face. Yeah, with my right. And I'll never forget the look on his face. He's bewildered. He doesn't know what hit him. And he shouts an expletive, and not only did my shot do some damage that I saw, my shoulder stayed intact. So I started getting some confidence. And up to that point, the whole crowd was cheering for a knockout, because basically I'm a sit and duck. But at that moment, it starts to shift. Everyone starts to smell a comeback, myself included. And so I start getting this confidence, and now he's scared, right? Like, he's losing this advantage, this momentum that he had, and he starts coming at me harder and wearing himself out. And I just cover up. I let him wail on me, but he's just hitting my arms. No points are being scored. And the whole time he's hitting me, I'm talking to him. "Is that all you got? You gonna let me come back? Come on, Jake. Come on, Jake. Come on, Jake." And students of boxing history, well, it's what Ali did against Frazier, against Foreman. He would put his back up against the rope. He would conserve his energy and just talk, get in their head. It's called rope-a-dope. So anyway, I'm doing this in the second round, and I start clawing my way back a little bit. I score a few points. Going into the third round, Jake is definitely still winning because of that first round, big first round for him. But I got some momentum going into the third round, even though I'm a few points down. Third round starts, and I look in Jake's eyes, and he's defeated, man. He's tired. He can't hold his hands up to defend himself. This is my shot. So I start throwing all kinds of punches. I have a lot of energy because, I was hurt, but
you kind of conserved it, yeah.
Exactly. So I start throwing a lot of shots. I catch him with a flurry that kind of stuns him, and I get a stoppage. So he gets a standing 8 count. And then he's allowed to continue. And then I jump right back on him. 10 seconds later, I get another stoppage. And so another standing 8 count, and another minute goes by, the fight's over. And I'm floored. I don't know if I won or not, but I know I finished the fight. After having that kind of experience in the first round, I already feel like I won the experience. I persevered. I proved something to myself about my identity, about my grit. And so I walking into the center of the ring for whoever's hand was going to be held up, I was already happy. Of course, I wanted to win, but it was already a proud moment in my life, a defining moment in my life. And when Covino held up my hand, it was my right hand, the one that was hurt, and I'll never forget that moment. There's pictures of that moment, which I'm so glad, because it really was what pushed me over the edge to be like, if I can provide even a glimmer of this experience for other people, if I can give them the opportunity or create the space for them to paint their own canvas of their own boxing experience and have something like this, I want to do it. And so it wasn't long after that event that I started planning the next Bulldog Brawl. And I planned another 3 while I was at Georgia. I graduated. I went to law school. Did well on my LSAT. Got some money to go to Georgia State, and did a year of law school. And during that year of law school, I realized what legal work was basically signing up for homework for the rest of your life. and I planned another event while I was in law school, where I was like walking out of lectures, to pitch sponsors or to call brawlers or whatever. And so I really put a lot of time and effort into our 4th event, which was when I was in law school. And in that event, we ended up selling out the Georgia Theater. So I became the youngest promoter to ever do that. They gave me a medal, and the owner of the theater gave me his office chair, which is this big, ridiculous, like throne, kind of leather, old school, antique chair that I still sit in today.
That's badass.
And again, it was
They gave you a medal?
Yeah, so if you sell out the Georgia Theater, they give you a medal and they inscribe the date of your sellout on the back.
That's cool.
Yes, I still have it. And so anyway, this experience happens, and I'm like, man, I like this a whole lot more than I like sitting in the law library. And I don't know what my parents are going to think. I don't know if this is the right decision for my life, but I know that this is where my heart is. So I withdraw from law school before the end of my 2nd semester. And I do it unilaterally. I don't consult my parents. And it's the first real big life decision that I do that with. It's the first real expression of my individuality and identity. And both my parents were really worried about me. They were really, really concerned, really confused, because I was so dead set on law school for most of my life. And they knew that this was like a cool passion project and hobby and stuff, but I don't think they saw it, and I don't even think I saw it as something that could really sustain me for the long term. So, there were a few really dark months after I withdraw from law school. I cope with this decision and this disapproval from my parents in some unhealthy ways. I try starting a business, building websites and coupling website building with social media really early on in the social media marketing and management days. So the business model was sound, but I wasn't willing to do the work because my heart wasn't in it. My heart was in Brawl for a cause. And I thought in order to appease my parents, I'd start this really successful digital marketing company. And not just to appease them, but to have that kind of societal approval of entrepreneur tech, whatever.
Startup entrepreneur.
And that thing failed. Yeah. And so I got really depressed. And I was running out of money, and I was, the Swedish girlfriend that I brought up earlier, she was supporting me. She was paying my rent, and I just felt like a burden on everyone. And I felt like a failure because this business failed, and I felt like my passion project couldn't support me, so I wasn't going to go all the way into it. I was looking for something else, and so I really hit one of the rock bottoms of my life, where just nothing was going right. And I went back to my mom, and at the time I was living in a high-rise in Midtown. When I was in law school, I could bike to all my classes, and it was a dope spot. I was living with one of my best friends, and he was basically my landlord. He had bought the place, and I was renting from him. And the last month I was there, I couldn't pay rent. And so I go to him, I say, hey, I'm going to move out this month. And I didn't give him notice, he understood. He's a good friend, and I ended up paying him back a couple months later when I started making money. But it was just a really, really tough time in my life, and I went back to my mom, and I basically humbled myself in front of her. I was like, I need to move home, and she let me come back. That cliche, like literally living in my parents' basement for over a year, and just putting my life together, figuring out who I was, what I wanted to do, because I'd withdrawn from law school for, I believe, the right reasons. I was getting an education for a profession I didn't want to do. and I had this passion for creation and entrepreneurship that wasn't being fed there. So I needed to do that, and I found a job at a place called Atlanta Tech Village. The place wasn't even done being built yet, and there were only 4 companies in there when I joined the company that I joined, called Sales Loft. So we're one of the first people in the village. And
you're one of the first village people.
One of the first village people, YMCA man, or Macho Man. How about that? There's another one. So anyway, I spent 6 months at Sales Loft, and that really rewires my brain. I learned a lot more about how a business should be run from actual entrepreneurs that had done this multiple times, that really knew their stuff and really poured into me. Great mentors, Rob Foreman, Kyle Porter, Tim Dorr. They were awesome entrepreneurs, and they gave me a lot of responsibility off the bat. They took a bet on me, put me in charge of their product, their second product at the time, called Cadence, which is now their only product. For the first 6 months, I learned how to build a business within a business around this tech product. And after 6 months, I got approached by another startup called Roadie. They were pre-launch. And I was number 22 at Sales Loft, and I had the opportunity to be number 7 at Roadie and be there for launch day. And in my mind, I was like, I'm joining these startups to get an education. I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm not trying to hitch my wagon to any horse and ride it off into the sunset. Like, these are learning experiences for me, and I just happen to be getting paid. And so I wanted to see something go from 0 to 1. I wanted to see Roadie go from 0 users and no website launched all the way to whatever it was going to become. And if it was a failure, it's still a lesson. So the founding team there was really talented. The CEO is a guy named Mark Gorlin. He had started a company called Cabbage most recently, which was the fastest company in Atlanta to reach $1 billion valuation. And he was the guy that convinced me to join the company. I got coffee with him, and I looked across the table from me, and I was like, this is the kind of entrepreneur I want to be. He was a people person first. He wasn't a coder, and I don't have technical skills. He wasn't, a big sales guy. He just really understood people, and he was a great storyteller. I was like, I want to learn from this guy. So I joined Roadie. I stayed with him for 2 years. And they let me work in every single department. I got to work under every department head. My main boss was a guy named Matt Finger, who to this day is one of my greatest mentors and someone that taught me everything about how to care for customers and how to take feedback and actually turn it into product development, and just a really amazing human being.
What was the premise of Roadie? I've heard of it. I don't remember what exactly it is, though.
So it's like Uber. So it's peer-to-peer delivery, but instead of people that they're driving around, it's packages.
Gotcha. So it's like if I've got something that I want to take down to Atlanta, but it's like a weird thing, like a bike or something, I would hire them? Or is it just regular packages too?
Yeah, bikes are a great fit because not everyone's car can drive a bike around, right? So
Yeah.
if you need to get a bike somewhere, you might need someone with an SUV or someone with a bike rack.
Yeah.
And so Roadie was basically your best friend with a truck.
Yeah.
But you could just summon them with an app instead of having to buy your buddy a 6-pack.
And if you were driving to Charlotte or whatever from Atlanta, you could pick up 5 or 6 packages and make some money on your way up there.
That's
Makes
right.
total
So
sense.
road tripping was another great use for it.
Nice.
And
Yeah,
really,
I do remember that. Are they still around? Are they still working?
They're actually crushing it now. So
Nice.
They found a really great fit with airlines. And that was actually my responsibility before I left Roadie. I was head of the airport expansion program. So I would travel
Like
all around
lost luggage kind of stuff?
Exactly. So I'll travel all around the country. I would go into the baggage service office, which is if an airport is the universe, the baggage service office is hell. No one wants to go there, right? That's where they put all the employees that are about to retire. That's like the final straw, because no customers that go there are happy. Their baggage has been lost, and it's the airline's fault. So basically all these people in the baggage service office, they're punching bags.
Yeah, they're the hardened criminals of the airlines.
Well, yeah, and they're just at the end of their career, they're a bunch of old people, and it's my job to teach them a new technology product. So they've been doing it the same way for 30 years. With this monopoly called Bags Inc., which is subpar service, and because of the monopoly, they have no incentive to innovate or improve.
Is Bags Inc. the company that will deliver lost luggage to you typically?
Yeah, in every major market in the country. Yeah, so
because I've always seen that on some YouTube videos. A guy will be on a travel vlog. He's like, I lost my luggage, and then randomly some porter will come and like bring the luggage. I'm like, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, and that's Bags Inc. So they outsource to a lot of mom and pop deliveries, but like they manage all the contracts with the airlines. So what we were disrupting was this monopoly that was like an 80s business model. And now it was, mid 2010s. So it was time to improve that. And that's what we were doing. So Delta was our first client, and I went to like 20-something airports and trained Delta employees on how to use Roadie to deliver lost bags. And I ended up building a lot of relationships with baggage service office agents, and a lot of them were really late in life and had a lot of amazing stories, and just being friendly with them, it was just like a breath of fresh air in their day because they're used to getting yelled at. And so I formed a lot of relationships that would come back into play when I entered the travel chapter of my life, because every airline employee has something called buddy passes. Buddy passes are at-cost travel for friends of airline employees. So each Delta employee, at least at that time, they were given 10 a year, and very rarely would they all get used. And so all these friends that I was making, they were offering their buddy passes to travel, and it really doesn't make sense to use a
you don't have to travel with them. It's just you just get a position in standby on like any flight basically, and it's just like super discounted.
That's right. So for international, you just pay the international fees, basically what it costs Delta to get you on that plane.
And it's what, like $200 or something? It's pretty cheap.
Depends
typically
on where you go, what country. But yeah, it's like if it costs like $2,500 to get to India, I'm paying $350.
Yeah. Not bad.
Right. So
unless you're in like peak season and you have to wait for like 9 flights in a row to get on a plane,
and that's the downside, is you have to be flexible with your dates, because you're going to miss flights, because either people are going to buy the tickets, or people with more tenure at the airlines,
they have a higher status.
They get priority.
Yeah, our friend Chelsea Zerna learned that the hard way. Did you hear about her story being stuck in Amsterdam for like 9 days or something?
Yep. Yeah. So Chelsea's a really close friend.
Yeah, she stayed in my hotel in Amsterdam one night because she was stranded, and I was like, "Yo, I'm here right now." So it was actually kind of hilarious and a perfect story, but
serendipity.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Well. But yeah, I know that the same thing had happened to me. I was on a buddy flight coming home, and I was with my brother, and there was one spot on the plane, and my brother flew home on Delta One in the standby spot, and I spent another night in Rome, so I know the feeling.
Yeah, it happens, and you just roll with the punches, right?
Yep, you just gotta roll with the punches.
It's another adventure, another experience, So, so anyway, I leave Roadie, and I leave it for an opportunity to go work in Costa Rica.
Nice.
And I have all these buddy passes, so I can get there and back pretty cheap. I'd saved up a little bit of money from working at startups. You don't make much money at startups, but you learn a lot. So I was equipped with knowledge, with some passion, with a lot of curiosity, and so I committed to 7 months in Costa Rica, and I was going to be head of marketing for this little luxury hotel in Monteverde called Hotel Belmar. About 80% of their clientele was from the West and English speaking, so they wanted someone that was able to communicate and attract those types of people. So I was living in a 4-star eco-luxury hotel. I was doing yoga twice a day. I was practicing my Spanish. I was becoming a member of the community. I taught 2 boxing classes a week, one to kids, one to adults and like police officers. And and I immediately felt like part of the community, part of home. And I'd never been a part of like a small town feel before.
Yeah.
I'd always lived in big cities because that's where my mom's consulting projects were. And so to be a part of a small town, like everyone knows what's going on in each other's lives. It was an interesting way to get that experience. It was probably the most pivotal 7 months of my life, because I had a lot of time to myself to figure myself out. It was a lot of those mirror moments where you're looking at yourself and you're figuring out what you're made of, and you're figuring out what you want to do and why you want to do it. And it was during that time that I decided to double down on Brawl for a Cause. There's one experience where our mutual friend Brian Wish reached out to me, and he said, "Hey man, I started working for this basically fund. At the time it was a community, but they were launching a fund called Kairos, and Kairos was doing a launch party for their venture fund in New York City. And Brian was recruiting volunteers, and he could have found volunteers anywhere. It's an awesome event to volunteer at because of all the, celebrities and entrepreneurs and venture capitalists that were being invited to the event. You basically had to rub shoulders with them. And I was in Costa Rica, so it made no sense for me to like fly all the way back to come to this weekend event and not make any money and all this stuff. But for some reason, my gut just told me to do it. And so I decided to come back, and I flew up to New York, and I get an Uber to the venue where the first party for the conference or the launch weekend was. It was at the Rockefeller Estate. So north of New York City, the Rockefellers had this massive like golf course and like multiple houses and tennis courts and all this stuff, and that's where they're hosting the VIP dinner to kick off this weekend. And I get there, and Brian's not there. He sends me a text to like ask for the volunteer manager. I go and find her, and she tells me, okay, Matt Thomas, you're an airport greeter. I was like, I have to go back to the airport. Like, I just drove 3 hours up here. Like, man. And she's like, not that airport. There's an airstrip just like 10 minutes from here. It's a private airstrip, and we're going to be helicoptering all of our VIPs from Manhattan to this airstrip, and it's your job to greet them. I was like, oh, like that sounds dope. All right. And so I go over there. The only other guy that's with me is the CFO for Kairos, this guy named Alan Pex. So he and I like get to know each other pretty well, and we're waiting for all of these Blade helicopters. Blade's like Uber, but for private charters.
Yeah.
And so we're waiting for
Uber's for the peasants.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Why Uber when you get a helicopter? And so 4 VIPs arrive at a time, and there's these big Mercedes buses that are shuttling from the airstrip to Rockefeller, and there's 24 people that can fit into the Mercedes-Benz bus. So we're waiting for like 7 helicopters to come before a bus fills up. So with the people that arrive early on, like we're having a ton of time with them, and it's people like Dr. Oz, people like the president of Mexico, people like the prime minister of Greece, people like the Jack Ma's representative in the United States, the richest man in China. So like it was people that can't do anything but talk to each other and talk to us. So I greet everyone. I ask them how they're connected to Kairos, and inevitably the conversation flips, and they ask me how I'm connected. Well, I'm a volunteer. I really don't have a job. I have a marketing job at Hotel Belmar, but it's not like a long-term thing. So what I end up doing is I just start pitching Brawl for a Cause. And I really didn't have an elevator pitch down at that point. I could talk about my past experience and stuff, but I couldn't like get it in 30 seconds. So
you were in Costa Rica. Were you still like thinking about your next event for Brawl for a Cause, or was it just in that moment you were just like, here's my time to pitch this?
So this is 2017. 2017 is the only year since 2012 that I didn't plan a charity boxing event. I was ready to shut down Brawl for a Cause when I went to Costa Rica because I thought, hey, maybe I'll be like a digital nomad, like travel and leisure marketer.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll like start a business in tech because I have this experience from Sales Law and Roadie.
Sounds
like,
sexy.
I was open to anything, right?
Yeah.
But what my heart kind of recentered me in this little private airstrip was that's what I felt most comfortable pitching, and that's what I really believed in, and as you kind of get feedback from people when you tell someone something, if they're like receiving it well, and just by reading body language and the questions that people would ask. When I'll talk about Costa Rica, they'd be like, cool, I've been to 1,000 luxury resorts, like who cares?
Yeah.
But when I talk about people fighting for what they believe in, when I talk about this weird charity boxing event,
first timers getting in the ring and all that stuff,
that really doesn't exist anywhere else. Inevitably there's questions, even if it's just like confusion or curiosity, and so all the questions that they're asking and all the feedback that I'm getting, I'm like, these are literally the top tier of the venture capital world, the entrepreneurship world, the people really high up in politics. And not only are they like asking questions and having a conversation with me about this, but they like the idea. I'm getting their cards. People are coming to mind in their networks that they think would be good fits to actually fight for a charity that they're involved with. And I was like, this is real. Like, and honestly, in those 4 hours where I was greeting all of these VIPs for Kairos, like I just had this massive reinforcement of my personal legend, of my destiny. And I end up getting on the last bus back to the Rockefeller Center after this flood of people come through. And do you know who Casey Neistat is?
Of course.
I sit directly across from Casey Neistat.
Nice.
And on my left is a guy, it's one of the founders of Kairos, his name Encore Jane. And his dad was sitting to my left, and he's a billionaire. He started a company that's competing with SpaceX. So it's called Moon Express or Moonshot, something like that.
Huh.
And to my right is the founder of Acumen. Her name's Jacqueline, and they're having basically a debate over me about the 1%'s role in humanity. Like, are we supposed to take care of ourselves so that we can employ all these people and create value in the world because we have this responsibility? Or are we supposed to live for others, and that's how we rise is by empowering others and rising up? And so they had these two sides to this argument. And I'm looking across at Casey, and he's like watching this happen like over me. And we're just kind of like making faces at each other. I'm just like, I'm literally sitting like this, and they're like, and Casey.
Casey's also the dude that's notorious for sneaking into stuff that he's like not really like. I listen to his podcast with him and his wife, and like his wife is always like, "I don't belong here," feeling like a fraud, and Casey's like embraces the feeling of like feeling like a fraud, like feeling like I shouldn't be here, but holy shit, I'm here right now.
So that exact scenario was what I was in that scenario. Like Casey was hired to speak at the conference at the launch event, so he was getting paid tens of thousands of dollars to speak for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't belong in that bus, right? And no one really. Maybe they knew it, maybe they didn't, but like I really didn't belong. Everyone in there was on a different level, but like they're all just people. Yeah. They're having conversations. Like I have debates like that with my friends too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
So like Jacqueline has this moment of like self-awareness, and she turns to me and she's like, "I'm so sorry we're yelling over you. Like, what do you think about this?" And I was like, well, maybe it's just because I'm sitting here, but I think it's somewhere in between. Like, I think if you do a balance of both, like, it helps everyone. And it was something simple like that. I just wanted to like,
and they're like, "That's genius."
and no, I see a facial expression on Casey's face, where he's just like, and so around that time we get to the Rockefeller Estate. Everyone's getting off the bus, and Casey and I are kind of towards the back of the line to get in. There's like check-in line where they're making sure everyone's a VIP. They're putting on these lanyards and everyone's going in. And Casey and I are in the back, and we just start picking up conversation. I have no idea who he is at this point.
Oh, really?
And he's like a weird-looking dude, right? He says it himself, right?
No, he's weird. He's super weird looking.
And he's wearing glasses, like his sunglasses, and it's like dark out. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, and like, why is he here? You know? And so I'm talking to him like, what are you into? And I think he had just done a hike in South America. I had just done Machu Picchu. So we were talking about hiking. We were talking about some like sports stuff, and we get at the front of the line. And another one of the volunteers who I'd met earlier in the day was checking people, or I hadn't met him yet. This volunteer was checking people in. And he looks up and he sees Casey Neistat, and his jaw just drops. And he's like, "Casey, like, I'm sorry, I know this is unprofessional, but like, I'm one of your biggest fans. You've changed my life. Like, do you mind if we get a picture together?" And I turn, I look at him, I'm like, "The fuck is this guy? Like why does he elicit this kind of reaction, right?"
Yeah.
And so I'm like, "I'll take the picture," and he's like, "Nah, this is kind of my thing." So he holds out like the diagonal selfie that he always does, and takes a picture with the kid. The kid puts his the lanyard on Casey. And he turns to me, he's like, "I can't believe I just met Casey Neistat. I'm sorry. What's your name?" I was like, "Oh, Matt." He's like, "Okay, Matt what?" I said, "Matt Thomas." And he said, "Okay, what company are you with?" And I just spent 4 hours pitching Brawl for a Cause, right? So I'm like, "Brawl for a Cause." And he says, "Okay, 1 second." And
he didn't know you were a volunteer. He thought you were an attendee.
So he turns around and he prints off a VIP badge. And he puts a lanyard around my neck.
That's amazing.
Okay, so now I'm like, what just happened? Like, what is happening today? But what just happened now? Like just crazy serendipity. And so I walk in, and I look around, and everyone but volunteers have lanyards on. And I'm like, okay.
So you're like, I'm not a volunteer anymore.
Here we go. Yeah.
Did the volunteer manager ever notice?
She's the first person I see.
Oh, shit.
So when I walk in, I get this little like panic, right? And I walk up to her, I'm just like positivity. Like all the reaction that I believe in and that I preach is like always a positive reaction first. Always. Even if there's criticism to come later, like always a positive reaction first. So I go straight up to her. I'm like, you could not have given me a better assignment. Thank you so much. It went so well at the airstrip. Amazing people. Like, how else can I help? Right? She looks at me and she's like, oh, like that was your role for tonight. You can help usher people in when it's time for dinner, help people find their seats, but you can just chill out for now. And then she looks down and she sees my lanyard and she's like, how'd you get that? I was like, oh, they just gave it to me at the front. And she's like, oh, you're really not supposed to have that. And I was like, oh, I thought everyone had one of these. Like, sorry. And she's like, it's okay. I was like, do you want me to give it back? And she's like, it's our secret. And so I walk into the rest of the event and like, I go up to the bar, I get a drink. I start talking to some of the people that I'd already met at the airport. And like, I'm in a really unique position to where even the other VIPs haven't all met each other.
But you've met all of them.
Literally shook every single hand, right?
And then they saw you with the lanyard on probably, so they're like, oh, I thought this guy was a volunteer.
And I never introduced myself as a volunteer. I was just like greeting people and talking about Brawl for a Cause, right?
That's awesome.
So like now like they have 4 bowling lanes at the Rockefeller Center. So I'm like bowling with the founder of Square, and then Dr. Oz is talking to these like Y Combinator people that are doing this health related startup, and I have this fitness following. I start talking about like my diet and how I exercise and stuff, and they're weighing in and like all these crazy conversations and experiences. And it comes time for dinner and I'm like, okay, back to work mode. Like I need to take care of my responsibility. Brian brought me into this. I've gotten lucky, but like I still have responsibility here. So I started helping people find their seats. And everyone gets seated, the programming starts, and the Rockefeller descendant starts welcoming everyone to his family's estate. And as he's welcoming everyone, I'm standing next to this lady. I'm just like, I can't believe that's like actually a Rockefeller descendant. She goes, I know, yeah, he's very generous to give us his space. I was like, oh, us, like, how are you connected to Kairos? And she was like, oh, I'm Alex's mom. I was like, who's Alex? And she's like, oh, Alex, he's the CEO of Kairos. And like literally at that moment, it couldn't have been choreographed any better. Rockefeller's handing it off to Alex to welcome everyone to this. I was like, oh shit. Like
first you didn't know Casey, then I didn't know Alex.
I should know who this guy is, right?
That's funny.
And she goes, so how are you connected to Kairos? And I give her the Brawl for a Cause pitch. and so she's like, oh, that's really neat. Like, why aren't you sitting down? I was like, oh, I'm actually just a volunteer because I didn't want to like, step outside my bounds. Yeah. She's like, oh, you had 3 people not show up. There's an empty seat. Like, go take it. I'm like, no, it's okay. Like, I'll stay with the other volunteers. She's like, no, really, you should. And she, as her son's talking, everyone's sitting down paying attention to her son. She leads me through the room, sits me down at my new table. And everyone has a name tag. So there's some crazy name in front of me. I don't remember what it is, but she takes the name tag and like, boom, now I have a seat at the table. 5-course meal, really interesting people around the table. Meet Jackie Zahner, who was the first female partner at Goldman Sachs, started a massive nonprofit called Women Moving Millions. They've raised over $600 million for female-founded nonprofits. So like totally in my space, like we work directly with nonprofits to find a champion for their cause, to fight, to raise funds and awareness for whatever they're fighting for. We needed more female fighters in our events. She had just started a boxing hobby. Like all these things were happening. I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why are the stars aligning here? Like why is this happening? And I think that's the most important question that you can ask in life. Like, if something's happened to you and you feel like a victim, instead of being like, woe is me, just why is this happening? Did any of my actions lead to this experience, right? Or whatever adversity that I'm encountering? Or if opportunity is happening, digging into like, why is this happening? Like, what is God telling me? What is happening in the universe that's aligning for me to be in this seat talking to this person? Mm-hmm. And so it's just all this reinforcement into Brawl for a Cause, right?
Yeah.
And so I won't go into the details of the rest of the weekend, but it's a whole lot of that kind of magic.
That's tight. So this was like a whole weekend event at the Rockefeller
This was just the first night. This was a Thursday night. I'm there until Sunday. Right? So there's all these like panel discussions, and I've already met most of the people that are like speaking at it or on the panels or whatever. So like when the other 1,500 people come to the conference, the launch event, like they're standing in line to talk to the people that I was sitting next to in the bus, for 20
So
minutes.
the Thursday night was the launch thing for all the VIPs, and then the weekend was like a whole conference where attendees were coming.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So this was like, literally the top tier of the people that were at the whole weekend of that.
Yeah, like you already, that's amazing. That's awesome.
It was nuts, right? So I go back to Costa Rica, and one of the contacts I had made over that weekend was a lady named Linda Lucina, and she was second to the editor-in-chief at Entrepreneur Magazine, and they were launching season 2 of their podcast, and she said that the theme of season 2 was overcoming adversity as an entrepreneur, and fighting for what you believe in, not giving up when you get knocked down, but getting back up. I was just like, let me tell you about Brawl for Cause, So she ends up booking me as season 2, episode 1 of the Entrepreneur podcast, and it's the first time I had ever had real media exposure. Like I had local stuff in Athens, I had local stuff in Atlanta.
But Entrepreneur Magazine is
international,
yeah.
Right? So like, I do this podcast recording. It comes out a few weeks later, and I have a flood of people that are signing up to Brawl for a Cause when we come to their city. So in 17 cities around the world, I have people reaching out to me being like, this is what I believe in. This is why I believe in it. This is why I think it's cool what you're doing. And if you come to Chicago, or if you come to London, or if you come to LA, I'd be down to fight. I was like, okay, like this has legs. Like I've done this on a local level, but I thought it was mostly my network, my energy that was like driving this. But this idea resonates with people on a macro level.
Yeah.
It resonates with the top 1%, which like Smash, like basically we're going after the high end of the market. It's an expensive ticket to get in Brawl for a Cause. It's a black tie, open bar, casino game kind of experience.
Well, when you're talking about like philanthropy too, it's like who has the money? Like kind of like with that debate you were saying with those two people in the van, like, the people that can help the most are the people that have the most, like,
right.
Obviously if millions of people give $1, that's really powerful, but you could have one guy that gives $1 million. So like you're trying to invite those people to your thing. Totally makes sense.
Exactly right. So this is towards the end of my journey in Costa Rica. And so my full focus turns to when I get back, what am I going to do? Because I'm almost out of money. Like working in Costa Rica, like I was making a little bit of money, but I was spending a lot going back and forth. I was spending a lot there. I did other trips while I was there to like Cuba.
Of course.
I went to Colombia to a wedding. I went to Machu Picchu, to Peru to hike the Inca Trail and do Machu Picchu. And a bunch of stuff. I ended up going a little bit later with Chelsea to London and then Portugal to do a pitch to Google and Facebook about Brawl for a Cause. Like I was spending a lot of money. I was running out of money.
Yeah.
And so... So when
the boxing classes weren't paying it.
No, I was doing this for free.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a community. It was just a way to like contribute to the community.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it takes, right? So anyway, I end up getting back, and a guy that has really changed my life. He's become my partner in Brawl for a Cause. His name is Sam Koenigsberg, and he'd be a good person to talk to on this podcast. I'd be happy to put you in touch. But in 2015, my very first Atlanta event, Sam bought 3 tables to it. And to put that in perspective, we had never sold tables before. This was the first time we were doing a black tie, open bar, casino game kind of feel. So that night, we only had 4 tables. One was for my family that I comped. The other 3 were Sam Koenigsberg and his clients from Merrill Lynch. He's a financial consultant for BlackRock, which is the largest asset manager in the world. So really successful guy and finance-minded. So he brings his Merrill Lynch clients. I check in with them often, make sure they're having a good time, because these are literally my VIPs. Like there are no other VIPs here. So keep checking in with them. At the end, I asked for his feedback. He said, incredible event. For as long as you do this, I'll use it as a client event, but I'll never get in that ring. Because he's seen people getting beat up and all this stuff. And I was like, you don't have to get in that ring. Like, you can keep buying tables. That's cool. Like, would love your feedback on how to get more people like you into this event. He's like, I'd love to help with that. Let's get coffee. So we get to know each other a little bit better, build somewhat of a friendship. And 6 months later, he calls me, 7 in the morning. And I wake up, I'm kind of groggy. He's like wired. And he's like, Matt, sorry to call you early. I was like, oh, it's okay. Is everything okay? He's like, I didn't sleep last night. I was like, why? He's like, I need you to find me a match. It's like, I thought you weren't going to fight. Like, what changed? And he said, yesterday I did a tour of City Refuge. I was like, I don't know what that is. What's City Refuge? He said, well, it's like a modern homeless shelter. So their whole thing is no repeat customers. You check in, they'll get you off whatever you're on. They'll get you trained for a job at like a food truck or a mechanic or a call center or whatever. And then once you graduate from City Refuge, you're like a functioning member of society. I was like, oh, that's awesome. And he was like, yeah. And they have this program called House of Cherith, which is specifically for women affected by sex trafficking in Atlanta. I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing, but okay, cool. And he said, yeah, well, I was on a tour, and the head of the House of Cherith program was giving the tour, a lady named Kelsey Deal. And Kelsey gets a call in the middle of the tour. And she comes back, she looks really kind of frantic and stressed, and says, I'm sorry, but the tour's over. And Sam's like, okay, that's fine, but is everything okay? Like, there's clearly something wrong. And Kelsey goes, well, actually, one of our ladies that graduated our program is back in her old neighborhood, and her pimp is about to come pick her up. And we really need to go rescue her. And he says, oh my God, is there anything I can do to help? And she's like, actually, having a guy built like you, he's a strong guy, would really help in case there is some sort of altercation. We don't expect any violence, but just having you there would help. He says, absolutely. So they drive, they pick up this woman, and on the way back, Sam's holding her hand in the back seat and listening to her story, and realizes that he grew up just a few miles away from where this woman grew up, and realizes that they went to similar schools, and realizes that this could have happened to his sister. And he understands that because of our airport, because of how our city is laid out and where it's placed, we're a hub for sex trafficking. And what an abomination it is. And in his words, he said, once I heard that, once I knew that, I couldn't unknow it. That's why he couldn't sleep that night. And that's why he had to fight for it. So months out from our next event, he signs up to fight. He spends 3 months fundraising. He fundraises more than anyone's ever fundraised. He takes all of his awareness, and he's not a big social media guy, but he doubles down on it for this because that's part of what it takes, is raising awareness for this mission. He didn't know about sex trafficking, and he's charitably minded. And there's a lot of people like him out there that didn't know that House of Cherith existed, that need to know. And he was like, if I can take a few punches and let people know about this, if I can be the one that champions this cause, then even if I lose, I win. And that's what it's all about, right? He had the right attitude. So he goes through this whole experience. He prepares like no one's ever prepared. Fundraises like no one's ever fundraised, is literally the model for what a brawler is, and goes through the whole brawler's journey like no one's ever done before. I put him as the main event against another amazing guy named Brian Jackson, who's fighting in memory of his mother who passed away of breast cancer. The guy's wearing pink trunks, pink shoes for breast cancer awareness, and they have a great fight, but Sam catches him middle towards the end of the first round with a left hook. Guy goes down. Sam wins on TKO. And so he has this amazing experience with Brawl for a Cause. And I go up to him after and I congratulate him, and he says, I'm retired. Before you say anything, I'm retired. But I believe in this. It changed my life, and it can change other lives, and I want to come onto your board and I want to help you scale this. You don't say no to that, right?
No, our board's full.
So
that's awesome.
So Sam and I stay in touch. We start brainstorming more, and this is right before I go to Costa Rica. So while I'm in Costa Rica, we're in the same kind of mastermind group, and we're working together in other ways. He has a really awesome watch company called Sablier, and I'm helping him with some marketing for that. And we're still talking about Brawl for a Cause, but we aren't really running full speed ahead until after this New York experience, where we're at Kairos, and I come back and I tell him all this stuff, and he's like, dude, like, and he's a really strong Christian, so he's like, God's speaking to you. This is his plan, and I grew up Christian, definitely a believer in God, but more of like a universe energy kind of guy, and really practice Buddhism more than I practice Christian practices. So into mindfulness and balance and introspection, the journey inward. So I really soul search, and I put my head together with Sam, and we're like, okay, what can we do to capture this momentum and to make the most out of our next event? Because not only is it time to go with Brawl for a Cause, but I'm out of money. and if I'm going to go full time in something, we need to make something that can actually support me, because I'd never taken a salary or anything from Brawl for a Cause. It was my philanthropic passion project, right? So for 6-7 years.
And how do you like decide that too? Like if it's for a cause, like how do you decide what to take and all that? It's kind of like being a pastor of a church or something. It's like, how do you decide what is like good to live on versus how I want to live, and do I live above my means so that I can, like kind of like that argument that you were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With Jacqueline and the billionaire. Basically, like, and I have strong convictions about this. The people that make the most money today are generally in what was called finance, insurance, real estate, right? Mm-hmm. So they're at the top of these big corporations that make a lot of money, provide a lot of jobs, do a lot of good. But if those people were in more philanthropic, more socially minded businesses or nonprofits, how different would our world look? It wouldn't be as profit driven, it would be more change driven, right? So if you can incentivize those people with the same kind of resources but have them doing different things, the world would be a better place, and I fundamentally believe that. So in order to have and retain and incentivize and empower top talent for things that do the most good for the world, they should be paid a lot. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'll be frank with you right now. My salary for Brawl for a Cause is $4,000 a month. I make less than $50,000 a year working as a nonprofit, and that's a big stretch for us as a nonprofit to be able to support that.
Yeah.
My goal is to be able, in the future, as we scale, to be able to incentivize that top talent. People like Chelsea Zerna, who's product manager at IBM, used to making 6 figures, to incentivize people like that to do the same quality work, but do it for something that they're passionate about, something that can do good in the world, and pay them at least as much, if not more, to do that work, because it's going to create so much more good and change if you're able to do that for people.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother conversation and podcast probably.
It's very interesting though, and I actually really appreciate you even like saying how much you're paying yourself, because that's actually kind of cool to be that transparent, because a lot of people get weird with money stuff.
Why?
Yeah.
We made up money. It's
I love that, man.
it's a measure of value, and it's really important. I used to really hate money because I was just like scared of it. I didn't know how to deal with it. I was in a scarcity mindset.
And when you're with those like VIP people, like the billionaires and stuff, it's intimidating because like they're still people, but they have so much control just because they have so much money.
And what you realize being around those people is they don't value money because they have it. What they value is experiences and people and doing good in the world. That's why they turn into philanthropists. Right? Yeah. So if I could start out doing that, if I could build my whole life around doing that, then I'm starting with the end in mind. Which is a big, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People thing, right? So it's that's my purpose. I mean, that's my passion in life. It's like I'm just going to be an entrepreneur and philanthropist for the rest of my life. Yeah. Right? So
I feel like that's very like, even though that I totally agree with what you're saying. Like, I feel like that's almost becoming like more of a thing now. Like, especially the generation growing up, like with Toms and stuff like that. Like, it's a business, but it also has a cause behind it. People want to feel like they're supporting businesses that are not just profiting, but they're also doing good in the world. And we like want to get behind that stuff, because I think fundamentally everyone wants to feel like they're doing a little bit of their part. But it's hard because you just get lost in the sea of all the things you could be doing, or all the businesses you could be supporting, or like, this business supports this cause that I believe in, but they don't do as good of a job as this company that has freaking sweatshops or whatever. So it's always like a trade-off. But I think that's becoming more important in our world, which is ultimately a good thing for sure.
I agree, and that's something that Sam and I both believe in wholeheartedly. So when I came back from Costa Rica, we put our heads together. We were like, okay, if we're going to do this all the way, let's aim big. And Sam had joined an investment company called Rise Ventures. And Rise Ventures had purchased a field level suite in the brand new Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The first game hadn't even happened yet when we were talking about potentially putting a ring on the field and having our next event on the same field where the Falcons and United play, and where the Super Bowl was a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty important stage.
That's right. And honestly a little bit delusional, and it's like me when I was 21 being like, oh, I'm gonna sell 4,000 tickets, no problem. It's like, oh yeah, no problem. We'll put a ring on the field and host a black tie event on the field of the Bend. It's like, even when we were saying it, I was like, this is a pipe dream. But if we're picking like the top end of the spectrum of what we could do this year, like that's the top end. So let's explore other options that are more realistic, but like let's keep this one in mind. And I won't go into all the details, but we end up finding our way to the decision maker on who can make the call to put us on the field. And it was going to be super expensive. It was going to be a ton of work. But they gave us a shot at another Saturday event in the spring.
Jeez.
To be able to host the next Brawl for a Cause on the field of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And so, I'm looking at Sam and I'm like, dude, like, is this real? Like, are we really going to do this? And around that time, one of my mentors and really close friends, a guy named Rodney Cook, he's president of the National Monument Foundation. He's on the board of countless nonprofits, including the Hearst Foundation. Hearst Foundation was started by William Randolph Hearst, big media conglomerate. They had TV guides and a bunch of radio stations and then TV stations, kind of like a Ted Turner, but the California version of it. And there's this massive compound with a mansion there called the Hearst Castle. Have you ever seen Citizen Kane?
No, I haven't.
It's critically acclaimed as the best film of all time. And it's based off of...
You're the Alchemist, best book ever. Seen Citizen Kane, best movie ever. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm into the things I'm into.
I'm just fucking with you.
So check it out.
I definitely... Dude, there's a lot of stuff that I have like the paralysis of analysis kind of thing where so many people recommend stuff to me that I'm like, I want to watch all the good stuff, and then like someone is like, you gotta watch like Pitch Perfect, and I'm like, but there's all this like good shit that all these people that I really respect have like told me to watch, so it'd be like a slap in their face to watch Pitch Perfect. So then I end up just like not watching anything because I'm like, yeah, exactly. It's like I want to be watching the best stuff, so if I'm not watching anything, at least I'm not watching stupid stuff, or like I don't know.
It's all about how you define best.
It's like a weird like mental thing. I don't know.
It's that moral compass. If you have something that's a purpose, for me, it's Brawl for a Cause. Every decision I make goes through that filter. Does this fit with what I'm trying to do with donating $1 billion in my lifetime through Brawl for a Cause? If it does, great. I'm going to lean all the way in. If it doesn't, I can rule it out. Pitch Perfect doesn't lean in.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Citizen Kane does.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Alchemist, Citizen Kane. I'm doing it this week.
There you go. So anyway, Rodney is on the board for this Hearst Foundation. They're doing their biggest fundraiser of the year. It's what funds Yosemite for the entire year, this one weekend. And so he says, hey, you're gonna have to share a room with me and my daughter. And there's only 2 beds, so you might be sleeping on the floor, but I can get you an extra ticket to this fundraiser. And I was like, okay, like how much are tickets? Like, can I contribute? And I'm basically saying this as an act of courtesy because I have no money, like zero money, almost, right? So he's like, okay, yeah, tickets are for like basically just entry. It's $10,000, and then there's expected donations ranging from $25,000 to $100,000 for various components of the Hearst Castle weekend experience. I was like, okay, like can't do that. So if you can get me in, like I'll sleep on the floor, cool. And and so we planned this big trip in California while we're mulling over whether or not we can do this Mercedes-Benz event. So I'm traveling around with Rodney. Rodney has since come onto the board for Brawl for a Cause, so I'm talking to him a lot about Brawl for a Cause, where I want to take it, and he's believing in it more and more. And we get to the Hearst Castle event, and it's basically another Kairos experience, right? It's another room full of people that can pay $10,000 for a ticket and are expected to give 6-figure contributions. And it's like the patriarch of Bloomingdale's, that big department store. He's there. The Prince of Denmark is there. There are all these crazy people, right? And so I get there, I'm like, whoa, don't belong again. But I'm here with Rodney, and Rodney knows all these people. They're honestly like, his like friends, and they're there for his foundation. And so he's introducing me around, and I basically have the most Gatsby-esque night of my life. I'm in a tux. It's called the Bond banquet, so like James Bond. So everyone is either dressed up as James Bond or one of the Bond villains or a Bond girl, right?
Yeah.
So it's like incredible event. Could not have been any more like top tier. And just my event planning mind, I'm like, hey, like this, we need to inject this into Brawl for a Cause. I'm getting a lot of like just through osmosis, a lot of education and ideas through it. But I'm also meeting a lot of cool people. And that night I end up at the kids' table. So there's this massive banquet hall, and that's where all the like big time players are, and they have a speech and all this stuff. And then there's a kids' table outside, which is like for the younger crew. That's either like kids of those people that still bought them tickets and they came, but like they just kind of put them all together. And the youngest Hearst is who's the host of that table. So he had like 3 buddies at the table. And then there's a really famous designer from New York. I'll think of her name in a second. But she had hired 3 models to model all of her dresses the whole weekend. So it was like these 3 models, these 3 people that were there with the Hearst and me. So like, again, I'm kind of feeling out of place, right? And all the guys, and do whatever you want, to each their own, but all the guys smoke cigarettes. So every like 5-10 minutes, they're like leaving the table, going and smoking cigarettes. None of the models smoke cigarettes. So it was like me and sitting with like these really interesting girls that are gorgeous and getting to know them and having fun with them. And at the end of the night after dinner was this like a live band was coming out. It was a big dance floor under the lights of this beautiful Hearst Castle, which is surrounded by a massive zoo and like the views all around us, like you're looking out of the Pacific Ocean, so sunset's on fire, it's nuts. And so this band starts playing, and my whole night turns into dancing with these 3 beautiful women that I had met at dinner. And after I really love swing dancing. I grew up mostly in Atlanta. I went to Westminster. There's a lot of debutante balls. I learned swing dancing really early in my life, and it has been a passion of mine ever since. And so I can move on a dance floor, and so I'm attracting some attention dancing with these beautiful women, and so the Prince of Denmark is dressed. I forget the Bond villain's name, but he has the kilt and like the gold teeth.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I can't think of it either right now.
But anyway, he comes up, he taps me on the shoulder, he's like, "Would you like to join me?" I'm like, "Sure." I'm like sweating profusely from swing dancing all night. My jacket's off, like you can like see through my white shirt because it's wet. And I walk over and he's this is the guy from Bloomingdale's, whatever, and he gives me a cigar and we start smoking and I start getting to know him, and he's like, "I'm hosting a little after party on the beach after this. I'll be providing the alcohol. I'd like for you to join." I'm like, "Awesome, yeah, let's do it." And so the band wraps up. I go with the kilted man down to the beach, and there's a big bonfire. There's another like music.
A bonfire?
There we go. Nice. Well played. And there's like a DJ on the beach and stuff, and the girls come too. And I end up walking on the beach with one of the girls and really have a strong connection with her, and we stay up until like 4, like talking and looking under the stars, and the waves are crashing. All this, it's like literally a fairy tale night. And Rodney had gone. Rodney can hang. I mean, he's 6 years old. He can hang. He's 25 at heart, and he stays up almost as long as I do, but retires a little bit earlier, kind of when I go on my walk on the beach. And after I walk her back to her room and I go to my room, I walk in, and my phone had died earlier in the night, and I go to the bathroom to plug it in, and I like brush my teeth and stuff, and my phone comes back on, and an alert comes from Bank of America. And you have like subscription services every week or every month that come in and charge you, and it's just auto pay, whatever. It says overdraft protection applied. I'm like, whoa. So I open it up, and there was like an automatic charge that tried to hit my checking account. I had $19.27 in my checking account. I had $0 in my savings. So at that point in time, I had just had this night surrounded by millionaires, dancing with models, going to a prince's after party, and I had less than $20 in my bank account. Right?
Yeah.
So like another rock bottom moment that was a lot more enjoyable than my first one after law school, but still just instant fear. Like I'm about to have to write a 5-figure check just to get a deposit for the Field Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is going to end up being a 6-figure check, all said and done. And I can't pay like a Netflix subscription and a Spotify subscription on the same day, like I'm screwed. There's no way I'm going to be able to pull this off.
Yeah.
And so instant
Netflix
fear.
and Spotify on one day, you're a goner.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I'm bankrupt.
Yeah.
So
literally, yeah.
So I get back and and I open up to Sam about this. I sit him down. I'm like, listen, man, like I'll work as hard as I possibly can to make this dream a reality. But I gotta be honest with you, like I can't, and my organization can't front the bill for this. And he's like, man, I believe in this, and this is not, this is not free money. This is not a donation. This is a loan, and you're co-signing the loan with me. But I'm going to put up the $33,500 to get us this date, and we're going to knock this event out of the park. And in that moment, that's really when we became partners. Because really when he had already bought the 3 tables and basically made my first event break even. Yeah. He had already fought in my second event and like literally created the model. He was the perfect brawler for everyone to follow after and emulate. But now he was coming in on the board, helping me scale it, believe in it enough to write a big check to make this thing happen. And so I was just so moved and so grateful and so motivated to make this thing happen, because if it failed, then I'm on the line too. Like it's not Sam put up the money, but I co-signed it, so like I owed him the money. Mm-hmm. Right? So like I would come in and charge you, and it's just auto pay, whatever. It says overdraft protection applied. I'm like, whoa. So I open it up, and there was like an automatic charge that tried to hit my checking account. I had $19.27 in my checking account. I had $0 in my savings. So at that point in time, I had just had this night surrounded by millionaires, dancing with models, going to a prince's after party. And I had less than $20 in my bank account. Right? Yeah. So like another rock bottom moment that was a lot more enjoyable than my first one after law school, but still just instant fear. Like I'm about to have to write a 5-figure check just to get a deposit for the field of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is going to end up being a 6-figure check, all said and done. And I can't pay like a Netflix subscription and a Spotify subscription on the same day, like I'm screwed. There's no way I'm going to be able to pull this off. Yeah. And so instant
Netflix
fear.
and Spotify on one day, you're a goner.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I'm bankrupt.
Yeah. So literally, yeah.
So I get back and I open up to Sam about this. I sit him down. I'm like, listen, man, like I'll work as hard as I possibly can to make this dream a reality. But I gotta be honest with you, like I can't, and my organization can't front the bill for this. And he's like, man, I believe in this, and this is not, this is not free money. This is not a donation. This is a loan, and you're co-signing the loan with me. But I'm going to put up the $33,500 to get us this date, and we're going to knock this event out of the park. And in that moment, that's really when we became partners. Because really when he had already bought the 3 tables and basically made my first event break even. Yeah. He had already fought in my second event and like literally created the model. He was the perfect brawler for everyone to follow after and emulate. But now he was coming in on the board, helping me scale it, believe in it enough to write a big check to make this thing happen. And so I was just so moved and so grateful and so motivated to make this thing happen, because if it failed, then I'm on the line too. Like it's not Sam put up the money, but I co-signed it, so like I owed him the money. Mm-hmm. Right? So like I would be broke. Like I would basically have to like go to my parents and beg or something. Right? Yeah. And so anyway, the next 4 months of my life was the hardest I've ever worked, the most I've ever been challenged to make that event happen. Basically, it was me, Sam, and a group of volunteers that were working with a multi-billion-dollar organization run by Arthur Blank, because Arthur owns the Falcons, United, and that stadium, and whatever administrative hoops we had to jump through, all that paperwork, all that insurance to protect someone like Arthur Blank and all of his assets, the people that had to bear that responsibility were us. I'd never done that kind of stuff. I'd never applied for a $15 million umbrella insurance policy. I'd never, worked through a 26-page contract with all the, I'd done a semester of law school, but it wasn't like I was in my arena. Yeah. I was punching way above my weight class, and so it gets just two moments from that planning. The first was 3 weeks before the event, we had a big meeting, and it was with the CRO of Arthur Blank Sports and Entertainment, big time player, and this guy was a total alpha male. He was used to winning. He had won his whole life. That's what he did. That's why he's in that position. And we had a meeting with them, vying to try to get to use the field level suites for our event, because we wanted to put our super VIP or our sponsors in this kind of like raised, really nice area to look down on the ring. And we laid all this out. We'd already pre-sold some of the things. We were ready to revenue share with them and stuff. So we pitched this idea to him. And afterwards, he's like, I like what you're doing. Anything for charity is good. I want to support it. Let me look at the contract, see what we can make work for the field level suites. I'll give you a call back. We leave. We draft him an email, like a thank you email, in the parking lot together, just to thank him for his time, to invite him to the event, just build a relationship. And even if we don't get the field level suites, at least we got to sit down with this guy who's like a key decision maker, really big time player, and someone that we wanted to be involved with Brawl for a Cause in some way. And as soon as we press send, like 30 seconds go by, and he calls. We pick up, put it on speaker, and he says, I'd like to direct you to page 4, about halfway down on the contract, and it's one little line buried in a clause that has nothing to do with this. But it says basically that we can't do something that we had been doing for months. And he says, based off of this, I'm gonna have to cancel the event. We don't legally have to do this, but I'm gonna refund your deposit, and good luck.
What was the thing?
So there are different kinds of event contracts, and we had signed one that had a lower barrier to entry because we were a nonprofit. And basically, we were marketing it like it was a Taylor Swift concert that anyone could buy a ticket to and come to. At least in his mind, it was completely open marketing, so anyone could go to our website and buy a ticket. And in reality, we were more of a private event style event, because all of our marketing is done through our brawlers and their associated causes. So in every event, we have 30 fighters. Each of those fighters has a nonprofit, so there's 30 organizations, some very local, like a pet shelter, some international, like Make-A-Wish Foundation or Red Cross. And so what we do is we market through those closed networks, through their followers, through their listservs, through their newsletters, and through the personal networks of our brawlers. So at that time, there was a misunderstanding, there was misalignment. But in that moment, we had just broken the $100,000 raised milestone. And in 6 years, in 9 events, it took us that many events to break $100,000 as an organization. Right now, we had raised $100,000 and we were 3 weeks out from the event, so we were going to far surpass what our organization had done to date. Like with that hockey stick kind of curve, like we were there.
You were just hitting that bell curve.
Like here we go. Yeah. And like that's money that was donated for these causes, for these people to fight. They had been slinging tickets. All these people were rallied around having our event on the field of the Benz, right?
Yeah.
So now the event's canceled. So I have to, what floods my mind is I have to call these brawlers and tell them they aren't going to get their moment in the arena. Or if they do get their moment in the arena, that we're going to have to throw together a last minute venue, find some parking lot.
Yeah.
Which is not going to be the same experience of what we sold $150 tickets for.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I'm free. I have like a panic attack.
It's like a fire festival thing. It's like everything's falling apart last minute. Yeah.
Exactly. Watching that documentary, I was just like, just a ton of empathy, man.
The guy who's about to go suck some dick for water, you felt for that dude.
Ton of empathy, right? Because I was just like, I've been there. Like I wasn't quite that fraudulent or fraudulent at all, but like, like I get where they were.
But anytime you're fundraising and stuff, you're raising funds for a thing that does not yet fully exist. It's like you're selling a dream that's, you have full intentions of executing on the dream, but it's like there are things out of your control that sometimes fall apart.
But there's a date, there's a deadline.
Yeah,
and
for
it's
sure.
got to be a reality by that deadline.
Yeah.
And we were getting really close to that deadline. So Sam steps in. Sam saves the day again. He says, listen, your team has helped us craft our pricing, our marketing strategy, everything. They've been not just knowledgeable, but complicit in all of our efforts here. And you know, we have evidence of that. We have texts, we have phone call recordings, we have emails, and that's stuff I never used to do. But just because of Sam's business acumen and his past experience, like it's just habits that he helped form in me that we were able to spend the entire weekend, again, sleepless weekend, but we spent it together going through all of our correspondence and basically building a case. I felt like I was back in law school. We were building a case for why this event should still happen, because his team was still, you know, helping us do this thing that apparently
they were like aiding and abetting you in this thing that they said you were like found guilty of or whatever.
Something like that. Yeah. So we send him our case before the end of the weekend. We get a call Monday. Never forget, I was walking around the lobby of Atlanta Tech Village. I was already on the phone with Sam when this guy called me, and I see his name. I was like, Sam, he's calling. He's like, let's do this. And I patch him in, and Tim says, I looked over your case, and looks like we're still going to do the event, but we're going to have to switch up the rules you're playing by because of the way you're marketing it. And so Sam immediately jumps in. He's like, whatever it takes, like, we'll do this event. Let us know what changes we need to make. We're in. And he's like, okay, well, you know, it's the same public event contract that you know, Kenny Chesney or Taylor Swift or Monster Jam or any of these big events that they have in the stadium sign, where they're selling 70,000 stadium tickets. We were selling between 1,000 and 2,000 VIP tickets for just the field. No way we're operating in the same arena, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at potentially a really massive loss. And so this is where,
because you're gonna have to put more down to buy out the stadium. Basically, you're competing against Taylor Swift and whatever.
More insurance. It would mean switching our ticketer from our in-house ticketer to Ticketmaster, which is a much higher percentage take and fee and all this stuff. So it would have messed up like all of the financial side of our event. And so anyway, we're on the phone, and I kind of pull myself back together. My panic attack's over. And I say, hey, listen, you know, I think I have a way that we can make this work differently. And I explain what I've already explained to you about how we market through private networks, and that all of the tickets that we've sold, all of the funds that we've raised have been through these organizations that we partner with. So in effect, this is a private event. And Tim said, you know what? I think that can work. Let's move forward. I'll put you in touch with my people. You aren't getting the suites, but the event can happen. And he hangs up. And Sam and I just like literally like barbaric like yell on the phone. I'm like running around ATV, beating my chest. Like people probably thought I was insane, but like, and it wasn't even like a big win had happened. It was just like, we're not dead. Yeah. Like we're not dead yet. You know. Like, and I'll never forget that. That was another like moment where I felt like everything was lost, and I wasn't in control of it, and you know, it really is just like the death of a dream. You know, like that would have been the end of Brawl for a Cause if that event didn't go off, because we would have been in debt. I would have had to, you know, probably get some job to pay off Sam, then parents, then, you know, whatever other debtors are involved. Like, you know, it would have been terrible. I can't even go down that road. So
it would have been terrible. But like you kind of said, that guy on the plane from the beginning, it's like, you know, just because you didn't go to law school, there were plenty of opportunities for you. You know, even if you did have to like work for someone to pay back all this like debt, like you probably could have figured it out.
That's right.
But I know you got to leave kind of soon, right? What time do you need to be gone?
So we can wrap up Brawl the Bends, and that'll be a good kind of finishing point. We can talk about the next event, and then
exactly. That's what I was going to say. I want you to pitch the next event, of course. So
that was the key moment in Brawl the Bends, where, you know, we were in the trenches and survived that battle and got to finish the war, which was putting on an event on the same field where the Super Bowl was a few weeks ago. You know, so this surreal experience where 1,600 people came out together. Brawl Nation raised $220,000 for the 28 causes that we supported that day. And,
that's awesome.
And that's what I'm most proud of. I measure success based off of how much we can give away. Our mission as an organization is to donate $1 billion before 2036. So we became a nonprofit in 2016. That gives us 20 years to basically create $1 billion worth of charitable good in this world through taking a few punches for what we believe in. So that night we took a huge step forward, and it's a very small step in the grand scheme of $1 billion. Mm-hmm. But in terms of where we are now, it's just we more than doubled our impact to date. So really proud of that. And there were other really cool moments. There was, Evander Holyfield coming to the event and accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award from USA Boxing in the ring that I got to hand him. And there was Salento, the guy that sings "Watch Me Whip, Watch Me Nay Nay."
Yeah.
He live performed that in the ring for one of the walkout songs.
No way.
So just like
That's
crazy,
insane.
Really entertaining kind of experience. And we have a lot of that planned for the next event too. So always want to pack in surprises and really surprise and delight our guests. Because it's really them that are driving this and supporting all of our brawlers and doing everything that we need to do. So, it was really the best day of my life. And what was the cherry on top was...
Better than the New York thing? Better than the...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And for this reason...
Better than the first event?
It was...
The first event probably was...
Yes.
Filled with a lot of pain and pleasure.
Sincerely the best day of my life.
That's awesome.
It was the fourth time in my life, and by far the best time in my life that my parents were in the same room.
That's what I was about to say. That's really like symbolic and really cool.
And they came together. And remember when I withdrew from law school, they were both really worried about me. They saw this thing as a hobby and something that couldn't support me. And now they're on the field. They're contributing to this success.
That's
and
really cool.
They're together. And the things they said to me that night, the pride that they expressed meant the world to me.
That's awesome.
And there's a societal trend to reject approval of parents and to have your own individual expression and do your own thing. But in that moment, it really rocked my world. And seeing them interact and be polite to each other, and it was awesome.
It was something that was a brainchild of your own. Like it was like something that you dreamt up, and not only did you like raise all this money, but like brought your parents together and stuff like that. That must have been like amazing.
That's right. Yeah, it was profound. And so after that event, we
that was last year, about exactly a year ago, right? Because it was like February 20th or something like that
17th,
last year.
Yeah,
17th. Okay.
February 17th, and so after that event, we start planning for the next one, and we have money in the bank to be able to for the first time start compensating me. And to start paying other people that have been helping out with the event as a volunteer for a long time, but are doing very high level, very skilled work.
Yeah.
And then also to be able to invest in our future, which is expansion. And what we've decided is not to physically expand and go to New York and LA and these other major entertainment markets, but instead to double down on a successful Atlanta event and to just basically capture as many angles and moments of that experience as possible, and then expand digitally. So the more digital content, the more reality TV style series kind of content that we can do and project across the world, kind of like that Entrepreneur Magazine podcast, the more we can spread that out, the more awareness is generated in those major markets, and the more those people pull us to where we go next, instead of us trying to push it there and recreate the wheel somewhere and spend a lot of money doing it, right? So that's the path that we've chosen, and we're really upping that for our next event, which is April 6th. We're doing it at the Georgia World Congress Center. We're filming all of the brawlers' journeys leading up to it right now. And we're capturing those little moments, like the first time they get punched in the face and they're doubting themselves and they're not sure they want to go through with it because the little blood's trickling down their face, or they're throwing up over a trash can, or they make their first cold call to a stranger that believes in their cause but has no idea who they are. Those are tough, scary things to do. You're taking these little baby steps outside your comfort zone every time you take on one of these trials, and so the more that we capture, the more that we share, the more like that podcast, the more that idea will resonate with people, because it's a hero's journey. Everyone is the hero of their own story. I fundamentally believe that, and if you're able to structure training and trials in that face the dragon moment, that moment in the arena, people are going to prove to themselves that they can be the hero of their own life, that they can take these lessons learned from this Brawl for a Cause experience and apply it to their own purpose, their own passion. They can fight for whatever change they want to see in the world. And so I'm super excited for this next event. Right now, we're sitting at $130,000 raised. We're still over 50 days out. That's way beyond where we've ever been before. We have a couple hundred ticket sales. We have 52 brawlers that are competing for the 30 spots that we have to be matched in the event.
So some of them are standbys, right?
That's right. Yeah, alternates, because people get hurt. People have things come up with family or personally that they need to drop out for. So we want to be able to slot someone in, and so anyway, the way you can find out who these people are, what they're fighting for, what their stories are, why they're willing to get punched in the face for this thing, is we have a partner, GiveButter. GiveButter is our fundraising platform and also what we do all of our ticket sales through. So if you go to givebutter.com/Brawl 2019, you can see all of these everyday heroes that are championing their cause. And you can also find tickets to come out and have fun with us in your black tie attire and have a few drinks and play some casino games and get ready for all of our surprises. So I hope you'll be there, and hopefully some other people that are listening or watching or whatever come out and have some fun with us. But
sounds awesome, man.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing in the world. I just want to share it with people.
Very cool. Well, this podcast should be going up before the event the event's on, what did you say, April 6th. Okay, I was going to say
Saturday.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this will definitely be coming out before then. So everyone out there, if you're listening, you want to come to Brawl for a Cause, we know where to get the tickets.
Awesome, man.
Anything else that you want to end on? I mean, I feel like that's really kind of the last thing, kind of just talking about the final event.
Yeah, I mean, something that we say and something that I'm going to have to live just as much as I preach, because our goal is $1 billion, and that is a long, hard road. There's going to be other moments like, withdrawing from law school, other moments like that Bank of America overdraft protection notification, other moments like that contract and feeling like everything was lost. And what we preach to all of our brawlers, what I have to live by is brawl on. When those trials come, when you get knocked down, you get back up, you keep going. It's all about persistence. If you believe in something, if your why is strong enough, you keep going.
There we go. Brawl on. I love it, dude.
There we go.
Dude, thanks for being on the show. I feel like we could have talked for like a couple more hours, seriously. Got a lot of great stories, man. But thanks for being on the show, and we'll see you later, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Boom. There you go. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thanks again, Matt, for being on the podcast. If you guys want to follow him on Instagram, he has quite a few accounts, actually. I'll link them all in the description below. They're all based on different types of content that you want to see. So if you're into his fitness stuff, his travel stuff, his philanthropic stuff, whatever you want to see, he's got a different Instagram account for all that kind of stuff. So I'll have those all linked below. And if you want to attend Brawl for a Cause, I will have their website linked below where you can buy tickets and donate. If you enjoyed this episode, which I know you did because you made it to the end of the episode, no one makes it to the end of the episode and hates it, right? So if you made it to the end, the best way that you can share this podcast is to take a screenshot right now of the podcast on your phone and share it to your Instagram stories. That goes a really long way in getting this podcast out to more people. And again, if you enjoyed it, if you truly enjoyed it, you're going to want to share it with some friends. So please, that really goes a long way. Number 2, if you enjoyed this episode, I know that you're going to want to go back and listen to some of my other episodes that are very kind of similar. So the first episode that I'll recommend is episode 112 with my friend Steve Orozco, who's the founder of Smash Global, and he's a former professional MMA fighter. Smash Global hosts events kind of similar to Matt's events. They're basically kind of like these VIP black tie fight events, but instead of everyday people fighting, he actually has professional MMA fighters fighting, and it was just a really fascinating episode, a lot of similarities, and we also talked about his time on Wall Street, the fight that ended his professional MMA career, and some of the challenges of running Smash Global. Definitely go check that out. That was episode 112. I believe it was called MMA Fighter to MMA Entrepreneur with Steve Orozco. The next episode I know you'll enjoy is episode 93 with my friend Chad Buchanan. Now, Chad, again, is like all over the map. He's a really interesting guy, but most notably now, he's an actor and entrepreneur. Back in the day, he used to be on the face of all of the Abercrombie bags, and he's gotten to travel the world as a model. He's done some amazing acting gigs. He's worked on some Marvel shows. And on that episode, we actually talked about how he dropped out of high school and asked his mom for the money that they were going to give him to college to go start his first business. We talked all about acting and making that transition from modeling to acting, and we talked about his entrepreneurial ventures. It was a really awesome episode. Definitely go check it out. That episode is called He Treats Acting Like a Sport with Chad Buchanan. If you guys enjoyed the show, which I've said that like 10 times now, but if you enjoyed the show, you like what I'm doing here, another way that you can help support the podcast is to go rate it on iTunes. But honestly, the number one way, if you really did enjoy the episode, take a screenshot, put it on Instagram, all that good stuff. If you want to follow me on my social media accounts, you can go to my website, andrewdeitsch.com, and you can find all the links to all my social accounts there. But that is pretty much it. Thank you guys for listening, and I will see you guys in the next one.
I was like, I'm gonna hit that price break, so I'm efficient when I sell the 832 t-shirts. I'm gonna make more of a margin on it. I thought I was being smart. Those t-shirts lasted 5 years.
Yeah.
So